Good morning, traders out there. Who's ready to get back into the market? I'll tell you what, there could be such thing as a rally in this market. What happened to all the bears that were here just on Monday? Well, it definitely shook the bears on the action yesterday. The banks coming in, bank earnings really kick-starting the earnings season. CPI coming in light, starting the rally. Now the only question is, can it keep going? Of course, we'll take a look at some live trade in action. And of course, we'll be joined by Michael Nauss in just a little bit. We'll take a look at the playbook, the Sunrise Report, which gives you, of course, what stocks are moving and where to look at. And who knows, maybe we hit it again on AMD, right? Let's go right to today's playbook. It's going to be a little bit like a repeat playbook, but sometimes that's just what it is. Let's go get that money, and that's what matters. All right, first up on the playbook, let's talk a little bit about, of course, AMD, as AMD's been making a nice move. And we talked about yesterday, would it fill the gap? And that's what I was really looking at to see if it would fill that gap. And there you go, guys. We kind of filled it already in the morning here. I'm going to put this a little bit bigger here so they can see the chart nice and big here. But definitely you can see how we were trying to come back here towards the action there, and definitely took a nice little leap yesterday, closing that gap here towards the 8th. And that's exactly what I was looking for yesterday. So really good trade on that. Now we can start to take a look to see where can we kind of pull back to, right? So we're starting to pull back already, and you guys can see that in the pre-market. I'll be looking to see hourly supports come into play. So maybe towards yesterday's hourly support around the 118.40s. A little quick washout and then a recovery is essentially what I'll be looking for on AMD. All right, we'll see what happens on this stock. Of course, this was one that a lot of traders were looking at when the year was ending, and a lot of people loaded in. So the big thing for me is, can we get back into this consolidation, right? Break through this consolidation to the left-hand side. You can see we're starting to make our way back. Now I want to see, can we make our way to 130 and fast? 131 going to be that resistance, 132. We'll see when we get it back up there. I'll leave this box as I expect it to be in this box within maybe like a week or two. It doesn't necessarily have to happen just today, but I'm starting to see the turn. And one thing that you want to see when you're starting to see the turn is some volume come in. So we got a lot of volume on that first day on the 10th, which was the bottoming event. Now I want to see volume come to that level. Let's say AMD trade 50 million or more, closer towards 60 million. We'll see if it's able to trade those volume to really give it the potential to get that momentum to take a leap. All right, let's keep it going. We'll go now towards Apple and take a look at that stock, guys, as Apple's making a nice little move here, already back towards this 240. I had talked about this long trend line, and would we come back into play? Well, there it is. It came back into play. We undercut it, and now are bouncing right off of it. Now we got to watch to see if we can recover the 9. The 9 right now is at 239.98 or 96. Just ticked down a little bit, but that just tells me more and more. 240. Big watch today, guys. Now, can this one just keep going? That's what I'll be looking for, of course. Hourly long pullbacks, it's not a bad thing to look for. That could be a move back towards 236 and then right back through that 240. I'm looking for Apple to outperform Nvidia in 2025. So I'll continue to watch that, and we'll see what happens. Nvidia even starting to pivot a little bit back towards the 140s. And of course, they had that big washout day on the 7th. Can it get back to that level? I'll tell you one thing. If it's back at 150, everyone's going to shake all those bears that were out there. As you guys are seeing the cues come right back towards that 520 action. And just a couple days ago, everyone was so bearish. Now, will everyone just start to lean on the bull side? We'll see what happens here. I think this also has to do with, of course, Trump election inauguration coming soon, and I've talked about that, so I'm going to keep watch on the action there. I'll watch a stock like DJT today, right? I talked about that yesterday. We had a nice sideways day today, so nice little bonus for the playbook today would be DJT. Looking for the move above yesterday's high, 42.25, but really want to see this start to get going, right? And I will be watching this right now. It's going sideways here. We'll look for a quick move higher, right? And if I do take this one, it'll be a quick trade, right? nothing that I want to hold until Monday. It's something that I just want to trade maybe until Monday, right? We'll see what happens there. DJT, can it get back above 42 today and start to push through the pre-market high around the 41.50? All right, let's keep it going. Let's catch some comments in the chat. If you guys have a stock that you guys are looking at this morning, keep talking about it in the chat. I'll definitely catch it there. Good morning to you guys. It's good to see you guys out there. And if you guys have a trade, it's up your sleeve. Let me know, guys. We'll definitely be taking a look out in the market to see what we can come up with. Let's keep a look out there and see what else we can come up with. It looks like market closed on Monday. Yes, Mike, market is closed on Monday for Martin Luther King Jr. Of course, there will be also, I think that's when the inauguration starts for Trump, right? And let me confirm that right quick. I can just take a look right quick. Yeah, it looks like I'm trying to see the start time here for you guys. Yeah, it looks like the swearing will begin on Monday, January 20th, right? I was right on that. And it's going to start at 11 a.m. Central Time or 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So by Tuesday, when we come back, the market could be completely different, Mike. So keep your eyes on that. We'll see what happens there. I have been trading Mara the last week and was good fun. Yeah, I mean, Mara's been a good one, right? I mean, you were starting to see Bitcoin names start to make a little bit of a lift, right? Even BitDeer getting a nice little push there. Mara starting to come back there. And I think this is all based to do with kind of the Qs coming back. A lot of times when tech comes back, you start to see Bitcoin come back. But I think we got to continue to watch it, right? We'll see what happens with Bitcoin. This is a Bitwise, a Bitcoin ETF. We'll see if we can really start to take another lift or another ramp up. I'll be watching other stocks that are affected by these, of course. I'm watching Unity right now to see if we can get a lift again. Of course, this one was lifting just prior to kind of the takedown and got a lot of volume a couple of days ago. So I'm going to be watching it there. Of course, there was kind of mentions with I think it was Roaring Kitty mentioning things in this. I think this is more to do with the metaverse coming back and crypto coming into play. We'll see what happens with that one. Like always, you guys can throw up stocks in the chat so that I can go ahead and take a look at it, see what's in the market, see what's going on right now. Let's go ahead and let's get over to today's Sunrise Report as we talk a little bit about the bank earnings that came in, different action in the market. Let's get right to it. And of course, we had retail numbers come in just a couple seconds ago, right? So I'll be taking a look at that, and let's go ahead. Let's just bring them onto the screen before we get to the Sunrise Report. Because if not, I'll probably just kind of move through this. We got initial jobless claims also, but here you guys have it, U.S. retail sales. Actually, I'll just bring in Benzinga Pro here. Of course, this is one of our partners that you guys could be getting, right? So here's retail sales here, up 0.4 versus a 0.06 estimate. So retail sales coming in a little bit light there. Jobless claims coming in at 217,000 versus 210,000 expected. 201 prior, revised to 302. So that's not good. Initial jobless claims are getting a little bit of a spike there. That's not a good thing, but I don't think it's going to spook the market too much today. Maybe in the first hour, I'm looking to see if maybe we get some pullbacks, but definitely something to look at. Core retail sales at 0.4 versus the 0.5 estimate, 0.2 being the prior. And then we can take a look to see what happens with the market off of that. Of course, that came in at 8:30. So let's just take a look to see how the market's reacting off of that. And then we'll go to today's Sunrise Report. All right, guys, as 8:30 came in, you got a nice Harmy candle. So it pretty much went up and down, right? And so at this point, I draw a rectangle through this levels, and I'm looking for the SPY to break in any direction, right? I'm going to wait for the SPY to break either to the upside on here or to the downside on there, because that's what's going to be the talling sign. Of course, it could do a little bit of a wick and then, pull right back down. But what I'm looking for, break out of that range, right? Even on the downside here towards, let's say, 593s, 592.80s will be a watch today. SPY starting to climb back. Keep an eye on it, guys. A lot of volume did come in there, and you started to see some little push. We'll see what happens there in the SPY. All right, let's get out of the SPY. Let's go over to now the Sunrise Report as we keep taking a look at what's going on in the market. And of course, the Sunrise Report is all about telling you guys what stocks are moving, what the news is out there today, and why, of course. Let's get to the action in today's Sunrise Report. All right, team, let's keep it going here. Let's take a look at some of the stocks that are moving today. Of course, a lot of this action really started yesterday, right? A cooler than expected CPI report with strong bank earnings really powered all three major averages to their best day since November 6th. Of course, we got December's retail sales report. That was definitely something to look at. And of course, we saw it. It came in a little bit light. So some of those retail names probably not looking as hot as they were in the pre-market. We'll talk about one of those big movers in our coverage here. Big movers and key earnings today. Let's talk a little bit about United Health Group. So UNH, right? Let's go to it. UNH here, getting a little bit of a move there to 523s this morning. Got a little bit of a spike right out the gates of the earnings, but then got hit down, down, down she goes. Revenue missed the expectation here. That didn't help, right? 100.81 billion versus the expected 101.76 billion. However, earnings beat estimates and the shares still dropped 3%. So one thing to really look out for is in the healthcare space, do we get good earnings and stocks still getting hit? Because that's what we've been seeing, at least the concern in healthcare names like Eli Lilly, like Amgen, right? They're all getting hit hard. Can they turn things around with the earnings season? We'll have to wait and find out. Let's go to Morgan Stanley. This is one that I wanted to trade yesterday, and I thought it would have a good earnings. It's not having that crazy of a pop off the earnings, but it's definitely continuing the trend. That's what we want to see in the banks, at least. Shares gained 1% after the Q4 earnings beat of $2.22 on the EPS and a $16.22 billion revenue. Investment banks surged 29%, driving majority of the results. Of course, we've been seeing multiple banks talk about the investment banking really surging. It was Goldman Sachs. It was BlackRock. So definitely seeing that take the nice little leap there. We'll see how these stocks perform in the open. Let's go to Target here. Target was getting a little bit of a pop and drop here, guys. So definitely got a little pop, but then the retail sales coming in not looking good, and overall they just can't hold on, man. And it's really surprising to me the disaster that Target has been, right? There was a point when Target was doing really well for a long time, guys. If you look back on the weeklies, it was doing great. Now it can't catch a break here, getting a big hit here. It raised Q4 sales guidance also to try to help it, right? I mean, that was expected to get the nice little push. It raised it to 1.5% for comparable sales, previously flat. However, profit outlook remained unchanged, leaving the shares flat. And now, if anything, really taking a hit. Now we're dragging, right? I mean, we're coming down here 4%. Let's see if the market's affecting this action here, and we're kind of trading within that range that I talked about. I did it on the 1 minute, but look at it on the 15 minute. Can we get back there towards the 594? That's one area that I'll be watching. Let's go over to Love, as it's not getting the love this morning, definitely taking the hit down as it got a downgrade by Citi from neutral to sell due to weaker earnings quality and cash flow. So the shares are sliding here. And of course, they've been trying to do everything in their power to get this stock to come back up. What have they been mentioning? They've been mentioning things like, we're cutting events. We're not doing the conferences anymore if we're not being able to be profitable, right? And bring that cash flow back to the business. So they're going to push on every single area that they can push on in this space to get Love back into favor. I think this is one that I'll be watching, especially throughout 2025, to see if I can get an opportunity back into this space here. So you can see this trend line, and we're starting to see some airlines start to pull back. We've been seeing the leader like UAL, Delta yesterday start to pull back. If we can get into this space, somewhere down into the 25s, right, into that space, I'll be looking to go ahead and swing this one. And I'm going to be working on a lot more swing trades here for you guys. So stay tuned. I know Michael Nauss is going to love that, and I know he's going to be jumping in all over it. I'm looking forward to doing a little bit more of that swing action here, but definitely love starting to pull back. If anything, it looks like the pullback should happen now. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this one, right? If we do get a pullback day in the industrial space and the airlines, this is not a bad one to watch, maybe for a rejection off 32.32. All right, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going with the Sunrise report. We got a couple more to get through. Let's go to Taiwan Semiconductor, TSM, of course. This is the best of breed in overall in semiconductors. I mean, when you think about it, this company has barely ever taken a pullback. In 2022, it pulled back there, but man, look at it since then. It's up 232%. It's past 200 and continuing to lift. The major concern with TSM has always been China invading Taiwan, and I don't think that's happening anytime soon, even though there's more mentions and mentions of it. I thought at one point it could happen. I was in that camp. But at this point, I'm not going to be in that camp. I'm going to just be watching to see what happens on TSM. Do I trade TSM? Not often. I think a lot of it has to do with kind of the spread, but you can see it has a tendency of doing kind of 2, 3, 4-day moves and then 3 days back, 2 days, 3 days up, 4 days back, 2 days up, 4 days back. I think this was 5 days back. Things like that. So I think that's what you need to be looking for. Can I ride the trend? We're riding the trend right now up 1, 2, 3. Well, will we get a fourth day? We'll have to wait and find out today on TSM. All right, guys, smash the like. If you guys got a stock you guys want to talk about, or maybe one of these catch your attention and you're willing to trade them, well, let me know in the chat. We'll definitely be talking about some of these coming up, of course, with Michael Nauss. All right, guys, let's keep it going. What else is out there? We'll be taking a look to see what else is on the Sunrise report. Let's keep it going. Let's go to U.S. Bank Corp here, and we got Bank of America. We got a couple more here to get through. Let's go. All right, U.S. Bank Corp. That's going to be USB, and it's getting a nice little lift yesterday and whacking today off the earnings. Regional Bank here, guys, taking a hit. It mixed Q4 results and adjusted EPS of $1.07 beat the expectation, but net interest margin of 2.71% missed slightly there as shares fell at 2.9%. And I think this is overall for the regionals. I think this could be an easy pullback area. And then we'll look to see if they get the lift with the bigger banks, right? Do they continue to follow? I think they got a little bit of a jump, a head start. Now we'll see if they pull back there. Bank of America, one that I traded just 2 days ago, right? And was able to make some good money. So we'll see what happens with Bank of America. Can continue strong. Q4 results topped the estimate of 82-cent EPS on 25.5 billion revenue. The shares were flat and now starting to, if anything, pull back here. So we'll see what happens. I think you look at filling the gaps a lot. So we got a gap up, right? Yesterday, well, let's see if it comes back and tries to fill some of this gap and then goes higher. That's the way I'll be approaching it. All right, guys, there's a couple more, but I think we'll wrap up with that there. Like always, guys, you need to pay attention to see what's going on with this market rally, and does this market rally actually have some legs? All right, guys, I want to give you a little bit of the rundown of today's show, guys. We'll have a great show on. We'll have Michael Nauss joining us in just a little bit. And I got a special one, of course. We've been doing some new segments. So today is going to be an interesting one, guys. I want you guys to get ready, right? Because a lot of times we have ups and downs, right? And today, what I want to talk about is the biggest wins and the biggest losses of the week. So one of the things that I want to do is, especially because we don't do the stream on Friday right now, is that we want to review the week, right? We want to catch our biggest winners and our biggest loss and learn from them, right? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? So if you guys have a fun, interesting story, stick around at 10 a.m. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then at 10:30, we'll get into the focus group of today, which is going to be focusing on market rallies and how you can really look to see if this rally has some legs, right? We'll also talk a little bit about the jobs numbers and why you need to be paying attention to that. But like always, we'll see what happens there with the market rally. Can it continue today? Just that alone will be something that we'll be talking about. All right, that's going to do it for today's Sunrise Report. Like always, guys, you guys can catch this on our Discord. If you don't have our Discord, check the description below so that you guys can go ahead and add onto our community that trades 24/7. At least it seems like, because that's how active the Discord is, guys. Go check out the Discord if you guys want to be around a community of traders that truly, truly are trying to push to the next level. All right, guys, let's catch some comments in the chat. How are we doing today? Good morning to you guys. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look here. All right. I never short China stocks on the New York Stock Exchange NASDAQ. Yeah. I wouldn't be shorting China stocks either. I feel like there's going to be a big China rip, but that's just the way that I feel. We'll see what happens there. What's up? What's up? Good morning to you guys. How we doing? Is that Big Rands in the house? What's up, man? It's good to see you guys out there. Definitely, it's good to see some other traders out there and some new faces. I want to continue growing with you guys. And Marita bringing in the TSM is choppy and the geo situation affects it too much. Agree. That's why I stay out of it. It just seems to me like too much risk to try to get after this one, right? There's other traders, but what I do like to look at is how TSM and Nvidia trade together, right? So sometimes you'll see TSM taking a big lead in the day, and I'll be, well, let's see if Nvidia starts to play a little catch up, right? I'm always about relationships, right? How does some stock affect the other stock, right? You guys can look to this with a kind of a outlook into correlation, right? So there's a lot of like correlation, asset correlation things that can tell you how correlated two stocks are. I look at it as relationships, and I just start to look at that relationship, just like I was looking at the banks, right? I know that industries affect sectors, right? A collection of stocks is going to affect an industry, and a collection of industries is going to affect the sectors. So I'm always trying to work backwards and catch some of the action. But yeah, with TSM, there's always that China situation that could happen overnight. That's why I couldn't invest in the company, because, I mean, I just hate to be in any company that could get destroyed overnight. Majority of stocks can, but there's a few that have like more geopolitical kind of concerns, with TSM being in Taiwan. All right, that's going to do it for that outlook. In a second, we'll start the show and really kick things off, guys. It's about to be 9 a.m., guys, so we'll be bringing on Michael in just a second here. Just catching up with some comments in the chat there, seeing if there's anything else. Look like Wheeler being mentioned out there. Oh, no, Wheeler. Man, that real estate stock, they love to pump it, so we'll see what happens if we're able to get another trade on that one. I've traded before, but definitely, it's going to be weird to have a Monday off, but I'll tell you what, with all the craziness that's been going on in my life right now at the beginning of the year, I think I'll use that day wisely. I'll set up the office a little bit better here and get ready, guys, because we're going to take TTP Live to a whole nother level. So if you guys are excited for that, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the share button down below. Let everybody know we're live right now, guys. Let's kick things off. Let's get to the real trading action and start that countdown. Bring on Michael and go for the trading action. Hugo wants 200, baby. You ready to get back to the trading action?
You aim, you shoot, and make money.
It's going to be a great day. You guys know where you're at. All right, let's go, team. Let's go. Let's go ahead. Let's bring on the man himself, Michael Nauss. Let's go ahead. If I can find my mouse. All right, let's go, man. Let's bring him on. How are we doing today, Michael?
Doing fantastic. Too many monitors there, eh? Sometimes I do the same.
You have no idea, man. I know everyone sees this one here, but I normally have like 5 or 6, so it's a little bit vast, right? And the one that I love is this one right in front of my face, which is the prompter, the Elgato one, and I think it's great, man. Now, Michael, you should look into one of these, because what I love is that like I could put like a chart like right in front of my face. And then I can like be like, oh yeah, it's at you need to look at AMD at the 126.74 pullback. And then you're like, how the hell does this guy know all these perfect price points? It's right
It's a
in
good
front of
feed.
my
I like
face,
that.
dude.
I like that. It's awesome.
Yeah. Got to have the tools, right? I think it's important to refer to this as tools, right? Like traders, we need tools. And
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes traders are not willing to, of course, get like the paid tools. But my thing is always get what helps you. Gets what gets you really focused, that helps you really look into the market. There's so many different services, partners out there that we even have to offer you guys, right? You use TrendSpider, I use TC, right? There's a reason why. You find it working for you. And I think that that's so important, traders. So just wanted to mention, check out our partners, of course. Of course, you have to get the kind of the bigger packages, and you guys can check them all out, whether it be from trading journals to using like maybe like trade ideas, of course, one of the fastest scanners in the market. So hey, tools, right? It's like trying to do a job, right? And you got to go hit the nail, but you only have a screwdriver. Well, it ain't gonna work out, man.
Well, exactly. Any plumber or electrician or roofer or whatever, right? Sometimes you got to spend the money because over the long run, it'll save you a little bit, right? So
Yes.
way I look at it is a lot of these tools, they may seem expensive, but they're really kind of one good trade a year to pay them off. So yeah, make sure don't go crazy with it. Don't get anything that you don't feel like you need, but there's a lot
Exactly.
there that I think could really help people if they just kind
Yeah,
of
and
invest
it has
in
to
it.
do with your strategy, right? And your mentality, right? And what works for you, right, guys?
Mhm.
Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at what Michael's looking at in the Michael. Of course,
Sure.
we'll start off with the heat map. What's out there?
As always, way more mix today, and that makes sense. If you just take a look at the S&P 500, we'll go daily. So this is today's candle, just kind of flirting with yesterday's high. So makes sense that we do see this a little bit more mixed. Just some standouts are semiconductors up 2%. So they're responding well to that TSM news that's going on out there. And then with semiconductors, generally comes a whole lot of more risk on, right? You can look at Nvidia, you can look at AMD, you can look at all these names from there. That's really the only standout to the upside. We have real estate actually down. This RWR is a REIT down 2.4%. So that's kind of offsetting it as well. So it's one of those things that you can have markets that do nothing, and then sometimes you go to the heat map and it's because all of the individual sectors aren't doing anything. There's really nothing up or down more than say 1%. This is a little bit different where we have the market overall not doing anything, but we have sectors up 2% and we have sectors down 2%. So it's showing that that the split is wide between those two sectors as opposed to not anything really happening. So one of those things that if you just look at the S&P 500, you don't look under the hood, you could look at this market and say nothing's going on. But you look under the hood and you say, yeah, well, we got semis up huge, we got real estate down pretty huge as well. Even the marijuana stocks are actually taking a little bit of a bounce. So some interesting sectors here, right? So we semiconductors, or Bitcoin mining, then we have marijuana, and we have retail. So I think those four sectors alone would be enough for people to watch from the upside. And then from the downside, it's very interesting to see Bitcoin down, where we have WGMI gapping up today. And RWR is that real estate income trust. So I'm going to be watching a lot of these sectors to the upside, and then this guy here to the downside.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what, Wheeler up today? I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of this stock, Michael? I mean, man, this is as pumpy as a stock gets. I don't know if you've ever traded this one, but holy moly, man. A
Yeah,
lot of
this is
stock
one of
splits
those.
and things like that, and that already gives you the idea, right? And then what you see is a bunch of those wicks, right? Big pumps, and then just drops right back down. So we'll see what happens there. But look at this, guys. In just like the last like couple of years, right? There's a 1 for 24 split, a 1 for 5, a 1 for 3.
Yeah.
And I think just recently a 1 for 2. So I'm like, man, how many times can they reverse split this?
Well,
to
it's
get this
hilarious because
love?
I zoomed out here on a monthly chart and it's showing
Oh,
all-time highs of $40,000 a share. So of course,
it's gonna get
like,
back there, Michael.
that's a lot of people's mentality, sadly. So yeah, from $40,000 a share to two. Now, for the people who don't know, I guess a little understanding of When a company gets under a buck, if it can't come up with a plan for the NASDAQ or the NYSE to get themselves back over a buck, they have to reverse split. So what happens with the charting platforms is they just adjust that price backwards. So this thing's never been $35,000 a share. Oh, sorry, 360. I missed the decimal. It's
Yeah, I
been
was about to say, I was like, how
$360,000
far
a share.
does yours go back? Because I have even in, like 360s,
Yeah.
400,000.
So
Is this
yeah.
for real? Like, come on, man.
So
And
then the
that
question
just
is,
goes
how
to
much
show
is
you, man.
well, how much is left in the float at this point? Because every time you reverse split,
Yeah.
you reduce the float. So unless they're selling a lot of shares to the public, that's probably why this thing has insane moves. But right, just
Yeah.
keep in mind if you're trading it, this is you don't see that with companies that are good from
Yeah, exactly, right?
$300,000 to 2.
That's what we're bringing in, really, is that this is a
Yeah.
low quality name, right? And the truth of the matter, the charts speak for themselves. So can you trade this? That's on you guys, right? No one, I never say that you can't trade anything, because everything can be tradable. As long as you can hit that button, buy it and sell it, well, guess what? It's tradable, right? So I
Mhm.
think at this point, it's more, is this the best play? Is this a high quality play for you? Is this A plus chart, B plus, right? Because of course, if it's more C and D, maybe there might be some better opportunities in the market today, right?
Well, yeah, and also length of time, right? There's nothing wrong with getting in out of this for a day trade, especially if it does have that liquidity under the hood. But it's
Mhm.
just one of those that when you're coming to the end of the day and maybe you're debating a little bit in your head whether or not you should hold some, it's just good to know that this was once a $360,000 a share company. So it's
Yeah.
what happens when these companies are that bad, and this is why the strategies that I'm working on in the back tester are to short a lot of these things. Is quite often what you have is these spikes happen, and then you either have a lot of bag holders or you actually have the company itself, right? If you look at AMC, AMC is 20x'd its float since the initial pump that happened, or the pump and dump way back there. Because what's happening is every time it pumps, the company needs money. So it's going and it's selling to its people, right? And same with these other companies. It's why, looking for something that is a little bit of a something that makes money or at least has cash on hand is a good idea if you're looking to hold for multiple days, just to say, hey, at least the company's not going to sell to me, right? I'm not buying while the company itself is selling.
It's good to see the love we're getting in the chat, getting a lot of
I
love
love it.
this morning. It's good to see it. Good morning to all you guys out there. And we definitely enjoy doing this every single day for you guys. And look forward to us coming back on Fridays. We're working on some education right here in the background. And as soon as we get through kind of all that course building, we'll be back every single day with you guys. But enjoy battling with you guys. And that's really what it's all about, right? The way I view it, we're a team here, guys. And what it's all about is trying to help each other find the stocks that are moving, right? That having that action that we're all looking for. We can't make the calls on how to specifically trade it, but what we can do is help each other catch those moves, right? Because the number one thing that you hear sometimes is what? Oh man, if I just would have seen that first day, right? If I just would have been able to catch it earlier, right? Well, that's why we're a team here, helping each other out, catching moves that are moving. So you guys in the chat, help each other out, right? Letting each other know, hey, I'm seeing this setup in this stock, right? The way I'm thinking about trading it is this. Are you guys seeing it? Things like that are really going to help other traders find stocks, and that's where we can really help each other.
Yeah, I just have annotated up here Rigetti. I mean, someone was asking about it.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I'm seeing, where right, we've got a shoulder here, we got a head here, and now we need to see what's happening here. If this is the other side of the shoulder, then it's kind of playing out exactly like me and Mitch were talking about, where you get that one last gasp of everyone getting super excited to get involved, and then down she goes. So what I would
Yeah.
watch, we talked about the anchored view apps from these highs right here. So I have 2 drawn in. I don't need to draw 2. And yeah, just kind of looking for what happens if we can hold this, if we come back in and hold this anchored view app. So again, this is the point of the anchored view app, is to say this is what's happening if you started buying and you dollar cost average into Rigetti at the worst possible time. right? Your average price would be roughly right where we are right now. So this becomes an interesting sentiment indicator. If we can dig in here, we can hold for a day or so and then start to push higher. Well, that's kind of interesting. If we just slash down through this and start to break down to new lows, then it's telling us, hey, people were using that average price as just kind of a zone to say, okay, I'm going to get out of my position because, like we mentioned, right, if you were buying this thing at 20 and all of a sudden it drops down to 5 and then it gets back to even, we know we shouldn't do it, but a lot, we've all done it where we said, hey, if I ever get back to even on this stock, I'm out. There's not a human trader that exists that hasn't said that to themselves at least once. Again, we know it's wrong, but it's just kind of human nature. So that's why these anchored VWAPs become very interesting. So that would be the area that I'd be keeping an eye on if I was watching this name with 1026. So just a quick update on the algos. I know people were, I've been getting some DMs about that. Still working on them. Yesterday was amazing with Fannie Mae, just absolutely fell apart all day. So here are my trades here.
Mhm.
Short right in here, and then a buy, and then I shorted a little bit when we came up to VWAP and failed again in the afternoon, and then covered. So a great little trader. Yesterday, nothing came through. So it's going to be part of it. When I test these things, I guess that's just going to be something that I have to pay attention to. Is there's going to be days where there is nothing. So
Yeah.
until I build something that has edge around it, today I won't be day trading. And
Yeah. Day to look at systems in between, right? And look at maybe checking other systems, how they're working, and just looking into the market. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that sometimes a lot of traders are looking to make money every single day. The truth is, that's not the way it works in the market, right? If we come in every single day with that pressure of I need to make money today, that's easily how we start to get in a rut, right? And it starts to create our emotions. We get risk adverse, and then we really start to kind of delete our own kind of potential, right? And I think that you have to be knowing, I'm just going to keep saying it, guys, brake and gas pedal, right? There's days that are going to be gas pedals. There's days that are going to be brake pedals. And if you can be patient on the brake pedal, get through the uncertainty time like we were in the market just a couple of days ago, right? There was some uncertainty. Now we're starting to clear some of that, right? I think today's a big day, of course, to see if this rally actually has legs or was it just a dead cat bounce, right? I think today will be a good telling sign, and it won't be the first hour of the day. For me, I'm looking at potentially maybe a first hour of the market just looking a little bit bad, right? Because I always think that the market loves to hurt where it can hurt the most, right? And so yesterday, that was the bears, right? They were all out there. They were all saying that we're coming down, and all of a sudden they got hit hard, right? So now the bulls are in, and there will be some bulls that got in yesterday, and now you need to shake them out. So what will I be looking for? A lot of hourly long pullbacks, right? Can we get back to hourly long support areas and see if we can start to bounce off of those levels, right? So on the SPY, like you're bringing up, right? Can we go back into kind of yesterday's range, maybe yesterday's resistance around 592? Somewhere in that space is kind of the area that I'd be looking at. What do you see, Michael?
Well, it's funny you mentioned 592, right? Because remember, I drew this VWAP yesterday, and it's just the anchored VWAP from right before we had that really positive CPI print, and very much respected a few times. Every time we pulled into that zone, we found buyers right off the open, a little later in the day, right into the close, and that's lining up right now pretty much with 592 because it will move up a little bit when the market opens. So again, I love these VWAPs just because they're showing me no holy grail, but saying this is the average price of people who started to buy right before that print and during that CPI print. They're sitting around 592. So if you are long, then you are probably going to defend that area. If it comes down to that area, you're going to say, okay, well, if I'm in at 592 and I'm a large institution, probably going to be buying down there. If you're short and it's coming back to your break-even price, you may be covering there. Those are both long positions. Those are both people buying stuff. So we can expect that we may have a little bit of a push up there. So that's my area to watch too. And what I'm considering doing on days like this where I have no edge in my system. Now, we're going to talk about, if you look at the equity curve that I keep bringing up, there's lots of flat periods here for this particular system of months. And that's why the goal is to add more systems on there. Personally, I'm okay with these being flat for months, because if you go and you bring in the S&P 500 into this is basically where the market's ripping, and this is a short only strategy. So I will be long a bunch of stuff in my swing accounts, and I'll be doing well there. So I'm okay with that, but I need to come up with some strategy to kind of keep me engaged. So what I may do is reduce risk dramatically and come up with some sort of S&P 500 VWAP strategy, kind of trade a little bit more like Michael, where he's looking at the Nasdaq almost exclusively and taking trades off of that. So those are some ideas, and then I'm always working on long strategies to flip that as well. So it's really, really excited, because if I were to say my demon, and everyone has a demon when it comes to trading, my demon is over trading and taking trades
Okay.
that I shouldn't. So to have something that says, "Hey, Mike, you have no edge today." Right. So look at your swing trades, look at the overall market, observe things, potentially work on new strategies. I think that will be really, really helpful for me, because it will just help saying, right, you got no edge. Don't do anything. Right. Sit on your hands, so to speak.
How you know? How do they know this thing here? How do they know this? Michael, they're watching my screens, man.
Oh no. Well, that's why I know where your stops are, right?
I love it, love it. What is Mitch searching on Chat GPT there? So what I was doing there, guys, is just going really quickly into the manufacturing report that was put out. So of course, we got not only did we get retail sales, but we also got some manufacturing data that came in there, right? And I think that's very important to catch, right? So we got some Philly manufacturing data that really is a complete flip of what we saw in December, right? And so this is very important, because this is a lot of how we look to see kind of overall kind of manufacturing activity, and could show that we're actually due for a nice little rally here. So stocks that could be kind of affected by this, right? The cyclical stocks, right? Materials, energy, financials, right? Could rally off of this, because it could show that the economy is on an upswing, right? So transportation, shipping stocks could be in play today. Industrial and manufacturing stocks could all benefit from this, right? So I'd be keeping an eye out on names like, let's say, Cat, Deere, right? Or the XLI, right? So I'll be watching those names to see if they can continue moving, right? They have pulled back, let's say like Deere off the 400 on the weekly. It's going to be a big spot, right? Can it hold that whole dollar, that psychological level, and start to come back, right? It got all the way up to, I think, what is it, 460 just prior, right? And Cat had been making big jumps when Trump got announced, which was back here, and has pulled back significantly, right? It's back to 350. So let's see if the industrial area can stay hot today. And it has had a nice little kind of 3-day rally. So we'll see if it can continue pushing. Any stocks in there, Michael, that stand out to you in maybe industrials?
I do like the look of Caterpillar, right? I think there's we've got it bounced off an upward sloping 200-day moving average. It's always a strong sign, right? Showing that there's, some systems or institutions that were waiting for that pullback to the upward sloping 200, and they were buying it. So it's fantastic. So if we can pull back into that zone, that would be great. That's a little bit of a deep pullback. I'd say more kind of 371.50. It's a high back here and a high back here again, high back here again. We go into, like a 30-minute chart or something, and maybe anchor a VWAP from, let's remove that one, and then put a VWAP on the lows before we had that monster rally. That's sitting right at 364. So maybe somewhere between there, 370 to 365, that could start to be an interesting zone. Could be a kind of a lag in kind of trade. If you expect this zone to hold, you could just start to say, okay, well, I'm going to buy a little bit at 370. I'm going to buy a little bit lower than that. I'll buy a little bit, right? So on and so forth on the way down. Because these are really strong, like long-term charts. They look great. You zoom out here. I always keep my markups up, because I always love seeing trades that I took way back in 2022. Little breakout there on Cap. But every time we got anywhere near this upward sloping 200-day moving average, there seems to be buyers coming in. We see that as well. So for a swing trade or a longer term trade, if we can get back into this zone and start to hold. I like it because, right, just showing that that's strong. And you're right, these really are bellwethers for the entire economy when it comes to industrials. It's fun to do AI and quantum and all this that we talk about, but at some point you need to be where the real stuff is made, right? You can't build a data center without something like cat. They have to clear the ground, they have to put, right? So at the root of everything, it comes down to saying, okay, what is the strongest names out there? And if it is just kind of fakeish stuff like AI and quantum computing and all that, that can last for some time. But if you start to see participation in your Deers and your Caterpillars, in shipping and people that make things that you can touch, that's great, right? That's what we want to find, because that's just showing us that, hey, that sector is doing well, and then from there everything on the way up, right, creates good jobs and all of that, so there's more people to spend more money on ChatGPT, like Mitch is over there. Are you getting
No.
the pro premium version?
Oh, no, I actually had it, guys. I could tell you guys all about like AI, right? One of the things that I've done really heavily is lean into AI, because I think that
Same.
a lot of people will try to fight technology when it comes instead of leaning into it, right? Because the truth is, whether we like it or not, it's like TikTok, right? I don't like TikTok. It's not my thing, but I'm not
Mhm.
going to run away from it and be like, no, I can't do shorts because
Yeah.
I'm just against it. No, that's just sometimes we got to get over how we feel and know what's beneficial for us in the long run, right? And so, whether it be Chat GPT, whether it be Claude, I love
Big fan of
Claude,
Claude.
to tell you the truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're a big fan also, Michael. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Tropic, yeah, man. I think though Chat GPT is great, but Claude does a really good job also. What I like doing is combining them sometimes. I'll do one search on one, and then I'll be like, I'll go to the other one and I'll be like, improve this, right?
Mhm.
Like, and then you really start to work it. But we can talk about that too, because at the end of the day, you guys can use AI to help you really kind of distinguish systems, help
Yep.
you look for trade ideas, things like that, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think it's an important thing to do and lean into all the technology that you guys can that can actually benefit you, help you with time, especially, right? Because
Mhm.
like in the morning, there's tons and tons of PRs that are put out there. A lot of times, what do people do? They go and they read an article on that PR, but that's someone's perspective on the PR, right? That's
Yeah.
not necessarily the details that might matter, right? And so sometimes I would just go straight to the PR, forget like CNBC, right? Go straight to the PR and actually pull that and get a high level summary, right? Then pull that high level summary and pull multiple, and then give yourself a nice outlook, guys, because that's what you guys got to be doing in the morning if you're going to be able to trade different names, right? Understand what's going on in the market. Now, if you only trade 10 names, this could also help, right? Because anything comes out in those 10 names and you can know and continue the kind of the news flow and stay with the news flow, right? So keep leaning into that, guys. I'll tell you guys, it will help you. And if you guys have any questions on AI, it looks like Michael Nauss and I can definitely help you
Oh
out.
yeah.
So hey, just let us know, right? And we'll help you how to best use it. And like always, I view it as what? It's my smart friend that does fast things for me. That's what
Mhm.
it is. It's not going to tell me all the answers, but does it work really fast? Hell yeah.
Yeah. I
Right?
couldn't do what I do without it, because again, I'm not a coder, and everything I do now is systems based, and it was one of
Love
those
it.
things that as a non-coder, I grunted my way through it, and it took forever, because anytime I wanted to build a new strategy, I had to learn a new concept in coding. I had to go in, and it was just very, very slow. And now what I've done, I've created my own GPT, which is one thing I love about ChatGPT, and I've
Mm-hmm.
fed it all the help docs of the different back testers that I use. And again, yeah, now it's my assistant. So I say, hey, now I want to start playing with anchored VWAP trading systems. How would I do an
Mm.
anchored VWAP in this thing? And I'll say, here, take this little code snippet. And also, it can check things. It can check your
Yeah.
work. And something I use all the time.
Yeah.
I give it my code, because there was one time I built a strategy that was so good. was like a 75% win rate. It made 5-to-1 risk reward. It was insane. So of course, being around a long time, I'm like, I messed something up. There's no way that it's this good. And I just gave it to it. And I said, the back testing results are too good. What I do wrong? And it read the code and said, you have what's called head bias. So I was just pulling in data from the next bar. So it was making, basically I was cheating. I was looking into the future with my code. So yeah, I just couldn't do it without it. And these are the worst these things will ever be. So I look at it as my dad always said, who's an accountant, that Excel did not replace accountants. Excel replaced the accountants that didn't learn Excel, right? Very quickly, it wasn't, do you know how to do journal entries and stuff like that? It was, do you know Excel? And if you didn't know Excel, it's get out, right? So
yeah, trust me, my finance days in school, they drilled Excel into me, but it's not as needed as it used to be. Like even like let's say if you just want to do like fundamental research, right? Like AI is going to be killer in fundamental research, right? I think in the long run, this is going to take away so much from financial advisors. But let's get off of that. We won't get into that conversation.
We could go for too long, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go for days on that. Let's talk about the market, guys. We're getting ready to open here. I'm going to watch for pullbacks out the gates because I just feel like we've had ourselves a rally. But of course, what I'm watching more is just the opening action, right? Instead of reacting here at the opening action, I want to watch it to know, hey, can we really kind of continue the trend? We are breaking an area that I thought was very important. I know that the kind of the numbers came in right, and that's what I was really watching for with this. Would be how would this react with the numbers? I put a little box in there from before when we were in the kind of the 8:30 time, and now we're starting to break, but to the upside, right? So now I'll look to see if at the gates do we pull back into that box and bounce back up, or do we not even go to it? If we don't go to it, this rally is showing you that it has that momentum and wants to keep going. I'll keep watching names like you mentioned, like Rigetti, QUBT, right? The quantum names. Can those momentum names hold on, right? Or will we start to see some downside action? Because it's mixed right now. I got QUBT up, but IonQ down big, right? So I usually tend to lean with the leader. And if the leader like IonQ is getting hit like this, I don't feel too good about QUBT and Rigetti. But we'll see what happens out the gates, right? Conflicting noise right now.
Yeah, I think the quantum computing sector there is just more indicative of risk on, risk off behavior. So just like I talk about it all the time with crypto, and if these things start screaming back to new all-time highs, well, nothing has fundamentally changed from the fact that the whole technology community came out with a consensus that these things are a long time away. What's happened is there's a lot of animal spirits out there that want to get involved. So I would very much look at it in that way and say, hey, we need to really make sure that we are looking at these and saying, okay, these things they're still bad, right? They're still not going to make any money for 10 to 15 years. They're going to run out of capital. They're going to have to raise capital by going to shareholders, which is just not what you want to see. But if they start rallying again, that's information for us. And that information is just telling us people are getting involved here, right? There's people that are buying these things. You can call them pump and dumps, call them whatever you want. But, George Soros' favorite quote that I love was always, if I see a bubble, I run in. This bubble's going to be really, really fun, as long as you got a plan to get back out. So looking right off the bat, talking about these guys, they're giving it up a little bit. So that Rigetti I've got loaded up here. So it's just a 5-minute chart. It's getting near pre-market lows. It looks like it could be a problem. That 30-minute chart brought up with the anchored VWAP right at those prior highs. Looks like we are breaking through those. So if I see a lot of closes below those, if I was trading these discretionarily, I would probably punch the short button there just to see if we're going to flush down to lows.
I'm actually looking at maybe taking a QUBT short here with that bounce right out here out the gates here. It's bouncing back towards the 9 EMA. It could use that prior pre-market as resistance here, or just above 12 here. So I'm looking to see if we can get a spike closer towards the 1250s, but I think we might reject the 9 here and start heading back through the 12. If we can head back through the 12, I'll take the shot here off of like 1220s here. to see if we get a big washout on QUBT here. We'll also take a real quick peek at Rigetti just to take a look at that. You're seeing a little bounce there. IonQ, a little bounce. IonQ, a bigger bounce, right? That one was really hit hard, and that one's getting the bounce here. Let's see if it goes from green to red.
Yeah, and I think that might be the way to play these, because it's holding under that anchored VWAP. It's holding under kind of yesterday's low and today's low. And it was what we talked about yesterday when everything was rallying, when we were going to the heat map and it was pure green, everything looked great. We were talking about, hey, look for stuff that's failing. And in this case, it was a lot of this quantum computing stuff that is failing. Because if you're looking at the S&P 500, not really much movement. We're still holding, right? So this anchored VWAP I have right here, I think is really important. That's the one, again, right from that report that really broke us out yesterday. You can see the times that acted as support all through yesterday. So we put a little bit of a shot down on the open. Looks like we're holding. Pre-market highs, you're sitting 595. Pre-market lows, you're sitting 593. So I think that kind of area is what we need to watch. If we hold that, then that's great. If not, I think we kind of test this 592, which not only is that anchored view up, it's also the 200 period moving average on the 5-minute chart, which I know there's a lot of day traders out there that look at and focus on as well. So some big areas there. And it's one of those, when you see a lot of these stacked areas, I know, Mitch, you were looking at 592 for a completely other reason as well. So you see a lot of these things starting to kind of stack together and push together, then it sometimes they act as magnets. They become kind of self-fulfilling prophecies, where if everybody is looking at 592 and they want to buy there, the thing will just gravitate to it because there's no bids, right? Everyone pulls their bids and they put them around 592. So that could be an interesting area to watch. I would not be shocked just to see a rest day. And I think a rest day is totally fine. If you look at what happened ever since we put in that little bear trap and just ripped from 575 up to 595, we had a $20 rip in the SPYs, just almost straight up, hurting a lot of bears. Then it's totally fine to rest, right? We're up where there's a couple wicks. If you go back into the beginning of January, we had a couple wicks here showing that there were some sellers. Not only do I think it's likely that we could rest, it's probably healthy that we take a little bit of a rest after such a big move higher.
All right, short QUBT, guys. I've been in and out of it this morning right now, going in and out of it, in and out of it. And the big part is when I get up about like 50, 60 bucks, I've been putting the break even. It's been coming back and kind of hitting me, right? The market makers are shaking it right now between 1210s and 1170s. Now we're finally getting that flush down. So now I'll go back to the break even. It could hit me because it keeps spreading out and trying to grab some liquidity, right? But what I'm looking for is the real flush. The real flush down on QUBT. I'll show you it right here. You can see how we've hit down here the 1170s a couple of times here. Now I was looking for it to take it out there. It just hit it and now it's bouncing. So let's give it a second here. I'll give it like a couple of pennies here, but it could stop back out through the 12s. I have it right at the 1199. I'm going to put 1201 here. See if it hits me, and they'll be about $24. So it might be like 30 bucks down, but giving me a nice little potential for the quick wash, right? Just looking to see it. There's the pop back. Now it could drive back here as it starts to shake some of the 1 minute pattern, right? So there's a lot of bottoming right there in the 1170s. It got close there. 1165 almost broke down, and I would have had nice like 40, 60 cents on 300 shares. So that's fine. The big thing for me was trying to grab that really quickly to see if we'd get the washout. Now the VWAP comes into play, at least for me, which is 1270, and I'm hands off now.
Yeah, and it's funny, sometimes when you see the stocks battling that hard, whatever move is going to come next is going to be explosive, right? Because you have two conflicting groups just battling it out, and when one gives up, either the buyers or the sellers, you can get these pretty big rips. So I think you're right. I think these are the guys to watch today, especially considering you look at the S&P 500. So far, it's not doing anything, right? Just chopping around. So one of those times that, if you're looking for action, then you might need to look elsewhere, and you might need to look at some of these more speculative kind of crazy names.
Nice rejection on the VWAP there. So kind of went right back up. Just kind of rejecting here. It's still pretty low. There's a nice wash towards the 1170s. Could cut through the 1160s now. We'll see what happens. But this is 1, 2, 3, 4 times bouncing off of that 1170 here. Let's see what happens, right? Looking around to see what else I'm seeing kind of trend today. And I look at the sectors really quickly. Financial services leading the action to the upside. That's good outlook. A lot of that is also a good thing to see is JPM right back up. Fundstrat Lee was out there kind of promoting JPM this morning, talking about how this could continue higher. JPM, nice little move right now. Financials stay strong. That's a good sign to see there.
Yeah, I love that guy. I always love watching him because people have been yelling at him for being a perma bear for so long, but it's better to be him.
There it goes, QUBT. There it goes. It waited for me to get out real quickly. There it is, guys. It got down there towards 1130s now. So it wasn't a bad approach, right? Like the risk to reward there, multiple times I risked like maybe 20 cents there. But when it actually flushed, it went there like pretty quickly from 12 down to 1130s. So that's about 70 cents, right? So we always got to keep the risk and return in mind, right? I could have gone back into it. The risk and return was there. And that's what you got to be focusing on so that you can keep executing, especially if you're trying to do quick trades like these.
Yeah, I still think Rigetti is going to join it. Funny, Rigetti's some relative strength here. So what I've done just to define some relative strength and weakness is I've done that anchored VWAP. So this is the anchored VWAP we talked about. It's holding on to Rigetti, and if it drops, then I think that's kind of the play to have there. But if you look at the Qubit, and we take that same anchored VWAP and we draw that at the same all-time highs, it never got there, right? So just showing that this one's a little bit of a laggard in the space because it couldn't get back to that average price that people were paying. So when it fell apart. So that's an interesting way and a way that I always love to look at relative strength and weakness, because to me, it's one of the most important concepts in trading. And there's just so many ways to define relative strength. There's so many ways to define relative weakness that people can get. People can get a little bit confused. They can, is it percentage gain? Well, that's a whole nother thing where that includes beta and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, relatively weak and just continuing to crash down. So might be a catch-up trade in our GTI. So I might take a look at this in my big boy account just for a little tiny speculative action. What I'm kind of doing is just marking this anchored VWAP right here. And that was the beginning of yesterday. No, sorry, the beginning of today. So the opening candle this morning at 5 a.m. We're getting there and we're kind of rejecting that a little bit. So that's sitting around 10.50, $11. So it might be an interesting shot just to take that and use your stop maybe at the highs here. You're risking about $1 a share. If this thing's right and it flushes, I think you could get multiple times that pretty quickly.
Looking around in the market right now, I'm seeing financial services. SoFi looked interesting there, and Affirm. Just two names that I looked through and found there that looked pretty interesting. So just calling out some names and charts that I'm seeing out there looking interesting today. DJT getting a little bit of a jump there. I've been waiting to see this one to see if it get the spike over the 42s. It just spiked over the 42s. Now pulling back a couple of wicks on the downside of things here. Let's see what happens. I mean, it's not a bad one to keep a watch on today.
Yeah, this one's interesting. We talked about this yesterday, how it had that 38, 39 resistance, blew through it a couple days ago, came back, retested it pretty perfectly and held. And now it's just consolidating. So I think probably everyone in the world is going to be watching the high of this massive candle that came through. And that's 43.50-ish. So if it can get through that 43.50, that might actually be a nice just kind of momentum scalp. Right? You punch in when it breaks out and then start to scale quickly. But through that, the next resistance is like $55, which would be just an insane move, especially for a day trade. I don't know if this is going to be one of those buy the rumor, sell the news type of things, and it's going to slowly grind up to the inauguration, which is the 20th, I think. So yeah, you could see that slow grind up. And you see this all the time. If there's a large event coming out, for any stock, you have the speculators that are buying it up into the event, and then as soon as the event happens, it dumps. And that's kind of my thinking with something like this, is that you may be able to get another 4 days or so. Maybe we grind slowly higher there, and then we turn around and we sell right after the event, unless something really crazy happens where he signs an executive order that everyone's got to be on social or something like that.
I am seeing at least. I always like to try to catch themes early, so I'm seeing a little bit of some strength in the robotics area, and the daily chart's still not the worst on serve. So I'm just keeping an eye on it. It's kept its trend pretty well. I think robotics is definitely something that's going to be talked about a lot this year. Of course, that's a lot led by the Optimus, by Elon. But I think that you got to keep a watch on this space because whenever there's kind of like a new technology or something that could come out, what is it probably going to be? There's going to be probably some new entrants, right, into the market, right? Some new players that want to be a part of this. Maybe they're smaller, right? Maybe they're small, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to be a part and take part of that, right? So, Rich Tech Robotics, Serve, two names that we've been keeping an eye on. I even have a friend that has some Rich Tech Robotics. I at least gave it to him at $2. So he sold some at $4, has already the 100% gainer. He
Nice.
loves to take 100% gainers and then just hold the rest. He says at that point, it's just mine to own. So we'll see what happens with this one. Can it keep going?
I have a small account that is quickly becoming a much larger account. That's just that. And that's actually a tip that I got way back in the day. If you ever buy something in doubles, take half off or maybe even take 2/3 off, which is what I do. So you made your money back and you got a little bit of profit. Take that other bit and just put it in a different broker that you don't look at far away. And check it once a quarter to see if one of the companies got bought out or something. You got some cash in there. But yeah, and the idea was this guy that I was talking to was an old trader who had retired basically off that kind of account because that was during the dot-com days where some of these little penny stocks that he was trading back in the day became these monster companies, and this little tiny account became a multi-million-dollar account just from some craziness. So same thing people did with Bitcoin, right? So you're looking at the VIX there really spiking, right?
Down. SPY, big spiking SPY down there. SPY leading the downside. Really, Q's kind of weak, but not as weak as the SPY. SPY led that first move down there. We'll see what happens. I'm looking around into the sectors. I don't see too much leaking, but I do see it in real estate, defensive, some communications. But with financials up like they are, technology still up. I'm going to be watching that. I think it's something definitely to keep an eye out for. Let me just take a look here and kind of refresh, make sure that I have all the freshest data there. And can see here that we're led by utilities and energy now, right? So I had a little bit of some lag there. Technology is in the red now, about 0.22. So that's one thing that I would definitely take a look at, right? So financials are just barely green after a nice little spike out the gates. Let's see if those can come back. Watching that to show some strength in industrials. I want to see if financials and industrials can get to the top today. That could show me that the rally's coming back, and then I'd look for technology to kind of follow.
Yeah, so I'm just here on the heat map, and we talked about how semiconductors, they were up like 1 or 2.5 off the open. Now they're 1.5, so that's going down. And then there was a bunch of other technology right below it. Remember, we talked about how this whole kind of column here was technology. Well, now it's gold miners, right? Now it's healthcare. It's the capital markets ETF, which is going to be banks and brokers, stuff like that. So a lot of gold, psychedelics. There's utilities, Berkshire Hathaway. So these aren't the really risk-on assets that we saw before. And I've also been noticing, so I always keep an eye on this, a little red creeping up. So some positive names turning negative. We're still up on the S&P 500, but barely. But the IWM, our small caps, we're now down, officially down on the day. We're below that anchored view up from that CPI print. That's, again, something that I'm just monitoring across a lot of these. So the Qs, the big cap names, we're still above it. But yeah, we're getting hurt kind of everywhere else, right? We're getting hurt in small caps. We're getting hurt in micro caps. So it is one of those kind of days where it's the big guys that are holding us from kind of completely falling apart. I'm still watching that kind of 592 area. I'm going to keep a close eye there. I might punch in kind of my futures account if we can hold that zone, just because it's just a nice make or break zone to play off of. If we get some strength in there, you can get involved. If we end up bouncing, that's great. If you're wrong, you're going to know you're wrong pretty much right away, right? So 592 by 591, you definitely know that you're wrong. If we're right, we get to 594 pretty easily. So that's a 2-to-1 risk reward, I think, on that pullback, and just a zone that makes sense.
QUBT all the way down to 1093 on that action. It's now bouncing a little bit above 11, but yeah, it wasn't a bad look to maybe get short that one, right? We had IonQ red, we had Rigetti red, and that was a big look there. IonQ did go back to the VWAP and quickly rejected it right through the low, back to 36.13. So that was also a not bad look on multiple wick action in the 38s. Right by the 38, and then now leading that down. We'll see if it goes back through 38. If it goes back through 38, that's when I'd be concerned that maybe you start to see a little bit of a turnaround there. But just calling that out. MPC is one that I'm also looking at in oil space, guys. I think this is one that I'd be maybe looking into more of a swing trade alert. Just seeing the strength it's coming in, and MPC loves to kind of have a nice trending chart. I've traded this in the past when it gets into a nice trend. So looking to see if it can hold on here. It's been a really stair step way higher, right? It's just stair stepping higher. Let's see if energy can continue here. Hourly is what I'm really looking at. You can see the hourly all kind of around the 150, 70, 150, 50 area. So as long as that can hold, break the 153 area and start to go towards 155, doesn't look bad. I'm looking for pullbacks to VWAP around 151.70 and then taking out 153.
Yeah, we are officially red now on the SPY. So good relative strength in MPC, right? That's a great thing to watch. Again, we talk about it all the time. If the market's selling like this, you're looking over at MPC for a swing trade. It's holding on great. You know, that's got to be strength under the hood. It means that when the institutions are starting to sell, they're not selling that, right? And that's a big question, is what are they not selling? For me, again, the only trade I'm looking at right now, looks like we got a little bit of a bounce here already, is just to see if we get some of this strength at the anchored VWAP from the CPI report, and then also this 200-day or 200 period moving average on the 5-minute chart. Looks like I'm going to miss it. We're bouncing pretty strong from there, but I'll give it another candle or two just to see if we kind of come back down and retest. But it could just be one of those days where they want it to, just like you mentioned before the open, they want to flush the open. They want to get a bunch of people kind of sucked in short, get some long, stop out of their position, and then be either rip it. But I'm still going with the bet that it's just a do-nothing day. That it's, you know, we had this massive day yesterday. We could have this really wide, volatile range on the SPY today, which is fine. It just means more buying dips and selling rips as opposed to a continuation. I think it's healthy if we have a couple days of consolidation, because it was just such a big move that we had yesterday. Consolidating for, you know, my longer term positions, consolidating around this zone, that would be great for me. Because, right, last thing you want to see is for it to come back and give up all the moves. Then you also don't want to see it get too overextended to the upside, because then the pullbacks are usually sharper. So yeah, so far we're just hanging out. I'm looking again that 192 area, if we can get back there, and then I can see us hold for any period of time. That's what I'm looking here on the SPY.
Interesting name, just to bring a story, a market story in right now. I'm seeing IonQ get a little bit of a bounce back towards that 38. We'll keep an eye on it. But I was like taking a look at the confectioners this morning because of the news of the Red 3 being blocked, and kind of how that's in a lot of candies and things like that. So just talking story out there, and Mondelez on the downside today. We'll see if that continues to take a hit. Look at Hershey's company right before this, right? Yeah. All that red coming in. That to me seems like investors wanted to get out. They were like, look at the volume change, right? So to me, this is a story, right? It's one of those that is not being talked about often, but definitely it's out there. When Hershey starts taking 4, 5, 6 days down, and that's the volume that you're seeing, to me, that shows a big investor hitting the out button. Saying, I want the hell out of here. And he kind of knew probably the verdict was coming soon. So, and I'm seeing the healthcare, Moderna, take a beating right now. Moderna's straight down, at least out the gates here. We'll see what's going on there. But yeah, man, it's not looking good in that area. Viking Therapeutics also taking a hit. A lot of people saw this as a little bit of a darling maybe for the year. And it's not a darling anymore, right? We'll see what happens there. Viking Therapeutics also taking a hit. Lilly, it's all around in healthcare.
Yeah, well, it's one of those. I'm very excited. Again, as a Canadian who doesn't care about your guys' politics at all, I always like to preface it just because you guys get so mad. But I'm really excited because there's a lot of shakeup from what I've heard from friends who follow this stuff in the new administration. A lot of kind of wild things are going to get tried, whether they're good or not. I don't care. What they're going to cause is stuff like you were talking about, that HSY just absolutely selling. That to me is starts to get interesting, right? This is a really strong kind of bellwether company, and I'm here on the weekly chart. Right? If you go to a weekly chart, we go back to 2012 here. This thing has never really experienced any kind of pain like this before. To me, it's like, okay, so is this now a trading opportunity? I bet you we are oversold on every possible metric you could imagine on HSY. So the question becomes, right, when do you dip your toe in? What kind of thing do you look for? For swing trading, again, this is fantastic. You look at, I've got a couple mean reversion systems on my on my system where we have this is what we look for: just insane oversold conditions on names that have some sort of quality. Hershey's not going to go bankrupt tomorrow. If they've got to pull some dye out of their candy and replace it with something else, it's going to cost them a lot of money, and that's kind of what's being priced in here. But they're not gone. You're not going to walk in and not see a Reese's bar anymore, especially in America, right? I think you guys would revolt if they took away too much of your chocolate. So the question is, when is this priced in? It's already got cut in half from its highs. Is this time that you start to pick some up for maybe a long-term Hershey's buy if you get it bounce? So I'm excited for this kind of action, and I think again all of that starts with the new administration. So what I liked, I don't have the volume on my chart, but when you were looking at Hershey's there, I like that massive volume spike that happened yesterday. Sometimes that's capitulation. That's them hitting the button and saying enough, I can't take the pain anymore. And funny enough, that usually happens somewhat near the bottom where everyone kind of throws up their hands and gives up.
Yeah, and what I like to look for, like you said, that big volume bar. I'll look for when was the last big volume bar before that. It's around the 200, and there was this big day where it traded 14.4 million. To me, that guy was already ready to get out there, and that's right around December 9th, about a month after Trump kind of won the election. So ever since then, it's been pretty much on the downside, right? It broke that support around 174, and it's just been leaking.
What I love about so I speak with John Boilinger, the creator of the Boilinger bands, frequently. I'm on an email list with him, and this setup on Hershey's, and that's why I'm leaving on your chart, because the Boilinger bands is absolutely perfect for it, where you had that consolidation. The Boilinger bands were starting to get a little tight. You have that kind of fake out in one direction, and then you see how it's just hugging the lower band right now. Like every candle, it's not violating it too much. It's not, it's just hugging that band. To him, that's kind of the perfect trend. If you get that to the upside, the idea is you stay involved in that name until it starts to back off the band. Right, it's just a little Boilinger band lesson.
Perfect swing trade type of stock, right? And these are the ones that you can let the market do the heavy lifting, right? It's going to keep working for you as long as the trend is in that favor, right? And so these are the ones that sometimes you can, let's say you got in, I don't know, on the 170 breakdown consolidation, right? You got in on this day when it broke. The very next day, it tested back and rejected that 170 recovery. And then at that point, the following day, it's already opening up at 165 and starting to just leak down. And then you can just literally just leave it on. A lot of times I'll look at that 9 EMA also, right? That light blue line that you see on mine, and you can see how it rejected it right at that spot here. That's a good look for me. Now I could just kind of run with that, and that doesn't matter which EMA you tend to use, right? But you could use that as kind of your indicator. Hey, if it closes back above that, I get out. If not, I can ride the trend.
Well, yeah, and so just the way John Boilinger would play this with his Boilinger bands is, as long you see every candle, it goes to the Boilinger band, it just hugs it on the way down. So one of two things is going to happen to separate it. Either the price is going to move up, or the price is going to get crazy volatile. Because for those who don't know, Boilinger bands are just a measure of volatility. They get wide when the stock is really volatile. They get narrow when the stock is consolidating, getting very tight. So one of two things are going to happen. You're going to have these bands really widen out, and then it will no longer be touching the lower band. or the price is going to bounce and then it will no longer be touching the band. So what you would do is probably look for in the first day that we're no longer hanging out at that lower band and we move up from it. And that would be like, okay, now it's time to get in my short position. And like Mitch said, it becomes very simple. You just check every day. You just take a look. You say, hey, are we hugging the band? Yep. Okay. Well, I'm going to stay short until I get that move off here. So we got a question here about NNE. So I've just annotated up the chart a little bit. A nice bounce today, but it's bouncing into these prior lows. And this is kind of exactly what Mitch just showed you on Hershey's, right? If you get a breakdown and then it comes back to the area that it broke down from, I think it's one of those that you have to very closely watch this area. I think this area is kind of a do or die for NNE, because if it can get above it and it can hold the kind of 2550 area, well, that's more of a bear trap that happened, right? It broke an area, it reclaimed it very quickly. Everybody who's short below it is in trouble. They're down, and everyone who got stopped out of their position, they're a little mad. Maybe they'll buy back in. If we reject here and start to push lower, well, that just says that the people who, again, shorted the breakdown are defending that short, and that kind of looks a little bearish. So I would watch this area, this kind of 24.5 to 25 area, very closely. Again, if we can hold it and it breaks above, then I think it's a good price. But yeah, I think you've got NNE right at the do or die kind of zone here. And that's both day trading and swing trading, right? If we can start to get above, and I'm looking at just a 5-minute candle here, if we can get above that 2450 and start to break higher, then we're getting above that zone. People are getting interesting. If we fail and start to push lower again, then if anything, this could be a good short. And then also watch, obviously, the OKLO, the SMRs, and see how these guys are moving, right? A lot of topping tails here, which are a little worrisome, which I don't like, because as I mentioned, I'm long some SMR from like 1750. So I was hoping that we would retake this $24 and then maybe move back to highs. But if we fail here, then again, that's the trade pick. That's my analysis on it. I don't know if you're seeing anything different on NNE, Mitch.
No, NNE to me, it's all about relationships, right? So if I look at NNE, what did I look at immediately today? I looked at stocks that trade similar with it, right? So I like to look at when I look at the nanonuclear, I look at SMR. I want to go and then looking at some material names like CCJ, like UEC, right? The uranium name, right? They're getting hit hard right now, and so that gets me not so excited in them. But if I saw CCJ ripping higher, right, at 51, 52, and I'm seeing that with NNE starting to show the setup, then I start feeling a little bit better. A lot of times I'm just looking to see if I can find an industry-wide or sector-wide move, right? Because then I have maybe 4 or 5 names that I can come after versus just one, right? So SMR also pulling back there to the 21. That's an opportunity. But to me, the same thing that I'm seeing. Just not seeing the same thing that I want to see in the material names today to make me feel too excited about playing that one. I'm looking at AMD right now, guys. It's getting closer towards that hourly support that I talked about. It was right off of the 18 kind of 30 area, and we're already starting to hit down there. So I think this is really starting to look like it might make one more opportunity towards the low. And I look for a lot of times the undercut and rally style of trade where I want to see a wick form through that support, and then I want to see higher volume as it starts to come back. So you see how the volume is declining into the cut down below this. I want to see higher volume as it shows that maybe you got some buying or a bigger order right below this support to see it start working its way back to the VWAP. Now, of course, what I'm trying to do is also trying to look at the Qs and the SPY, and I can see them leaking. So until they start to show some strength, I don't need to be in this. I'm just looking for hourly long pullbacks to keep looking at levels to maybe buy the dip, right? But the key is the market needs to actually start showing me that it wants to come back. SPY's weak. And it seems like today was a clear day where the market just wanted to hurt the most out the gates, right? And it's hurting the most. It's hurting the bulls right now. Now you'll start to see, I think, bears start to jump in. And then we'll look to see if the afternoon, or maybe by 10:30, an hour after, do we start to see that switch?
Yeah, so I'm watching, right? We're a little bit under that 192 zone that we were talking about, right? That's the anchored VWAP, it's 200-day moving average. There's some support on the chart here as well. So, right, we're 1 minute into this new candle. So I'm going to watch to see what happens in this candle. If we continue to bleed, then, the trade I had of buying that dip is completely off. If we can bounce pretty quickly and get back through there, then it's something that I need to keep an eye on, because again, this zone is what I'm looking for, right? It's not necessarily that 192 price, but right, you give it a little bit, especially on the SPY, right? You got to give it a $600 name, give it a little bit of action. So, right, we're bouncing a bit here. So yeah, I'm just watching this closely. I may just take the trade as well on this paper trader that I'm using just to kind of figure things out before I get back involved into the evals. So,
cyclical names taking a wallop. I see some residential construction taking a hit today. Apparel manufacturing, auto manufacturers. It's an interesting day, to say the least. Right, we'll see what sectors can get back into the green. Right now, there's not much from the open that's in green. We'll keep watching.
Yeah, on the heat map, right? I love checking in on this periodically because it just shows a nice update. We were very green right off the bat. Now we're a little bit red. But if you look at these numbers, we're 0.05%, 0.05%, 0.05, 0.07. So a lot of these are flat. Semiconductors are still doing great. Bitcoin is still not, but everything else is just kind of chopping around flat. Now we did reclaim that 192 right on, we were talking about right in that zone. So I'm going to take this that little paper trade just to see. Let me go over to my futures account. I am going to take a little bit of a shot here. I'm going to risk a point on this just to see if we're going to be get a little bounce from this zone, right? I do think there is that potential, but again, let's do that one. But yeah, we're just trying to take a little bit of a shot. I don't mean that's going to be the low for the day or anything. There's a lot of support around here that I think people could be getting involved in. So
IonQ starting to push there, guys. 38.66. So some of those are coming back. They're right back through VWAP. QUBT went down there, I think, towards like low 11s, even into the 10s, and it's back to 12.52. So keep your eyes on that. I say keep watch on that IonQ. See if it can keep going as the leader. Apple's still pretty weak out the gates here. Nvidia still not above VWAP. I'm waiting to start seeing those bigger boys start to show some strength. Microsoft also below VWAP. Just trying to see some strength in some of the big boys. Meta not looking too bad on the bounce of 612s. We'll look to see if it holds that on a pullback. Amazon, just looking around at the big boys. They're all pretty red right now. And I think that's another thing that's holding back the market, right? When the big boys don't want to go, a lot of times it's very, very difficult for the market to get back towards green. It's almost impossible, right? I mean, with all these names red.
Yeah, with especially with just how weighted it is to those big names. But I did take a little bit of a shot there. I got still a little under that 192 area, risking the 191, a little under 191, just to take a shot, see if we're pulling back, or if we're going to bounce here. Interesting to see the Qs, right? Relatively strong. We hit that zone and then bounced, whereas the SPY leaked below it. And then I was looking at RSP, and RSP is relatively weak. So we talk about this all the time about how, these names aren't monoliths, right? The SP 500 is 500 names that are weighted in a certain way. It's very, very mathematical. And same with the Qs and same with the RSP. So when you see the Qs doing well, but RSP not, it's just showing you that, yes, we're having a more sustained move in tech, which, again, I showed you guys over here when it came to the fact that the semiconductors were doing the best and everything else was bleeding a little bit, where we have the everything else, right? The every guy out there is not doing so well. So again, just showing me that there could be a little bit of a trade to be have here. It looks like we're getting that bounce. I was able to mirror the trade here in the paper trader, but that was just basically my idea. And talked about this right off the jump, right off the open. So at least it's all set out, right? So we're not guessing as things happen throughout the day. Say, hey, if it pulls into 192 and I see a nice bottoming tail or something there, I'll take a shot. And then if I'm right, great. If I'm not, fine. Overall and in the long run, doing planned out trades like that is going to be way better than trying to kind of catch things moving on the fly. So looks like we had a bottoming tail at 192, and then we have so far a topping tail at 192. So like we talked about, big battles going on here. Is there any, forgot to check, is there anything else that's happening today? More FOMC guys yapping.
Yeah, the talking heads, man. But what are they going to say, right? They're going to say that, yeah, maybe we don't have to raise. Maybe you might hear, maybe we need to think about cutting. But I don't think you're going to see that much because the jobless claims numbers, yeah, they got a little spike there and there was a big revision, but it wasn't that bad on this report, right? The revision was bad, but I don't think at least the numbers that came in today will really put some scare into the Fed. But we'll have to wait and see there. Taking a look at a name like RCAT, because there's going to be some trends that might stick through this, right? Some themes that stay through 2025. Now, one thing's for certain is that I'm sure Trump has heard all about the drones out there. And
yes.
I'm sure that he's the type that might just be like, dude, why doesn't our military just go in and shoot all these things down? So I think in the long run, I think you got to watch to see what happens there because there's been talk about a major drone company, right? DJI, right? Talked about how it could be banned and that could be done by us because they're supposedly spying on us, right? So I'm taking this RCAT here, guys, and I'm going to do this one on the smaller account. Of course, this is the one that I take like the smaller names on it. Take 200 there. I'll like to see it try to test the 11 now. On an ad, and then I'll look for the 1120 ad there. We'll see what happens on this one, but I just think that this is one of those themes that could stick around for 2025. Let's see if this starts to get going. Big Watch is recovering the 9 EMA today, 1105, and it's part of kind of those momentum names right now. Let's see if they can really kind of push here, and we can get a little bit of some RCAT love.
So I just brought up the Fed Watch tool just because we were talking about the Fed and potentially cutting rates. Currently, the market is pricing in a 97.3% chance that nothing happens. So really, you're right. What are they going to say at this point to do one thing or another? If there's that much of a chance that the market is just guessing that, hey, nothing's going to happen, then that's great. I mean, 1 month ago, that was an 83% chance. 1 day ago, it was a 97.9. So pretty much hasn't moved. So there's only a 2% chance that they're going to cut by 25 basis points, and currently pricing in absolutely no chance that there's going to be a hike at all. So it's an interesting tool for those who don't know. It's just the CME group. You can just do CME Fed Watch, and all it does, it takes the interest rates and it takes what the interest rates are paying at, doing at. It's again completely free. And then what it does is just say, here's what the market thinks anyway, right? These aren't probabilities given to us by the Fed or anything. These are just the probabilities that the market believes that happens. And usually the market's fairly good. You'll see bigger swings when it comes to large events happen. But even from the CPI print, it went from a 93% chance to a 97% chance. So again, odds are no change. Tiny, almost insignificant chance of an ease, and then 0% chance of a hike. Market's doing great, so my buy down there looks like I was able to get some day trading action today, which is good. Certainly wouldn't lose on it at this point. Just going for a little bit of a bounce into the range, not expecting us to take out highs or do anything like that, but nice little bounce on the SPY, right where me and Mitch were saying it. It's funny how we both arrived at that 592 completely differently with completely different analysis. I think if anything, that's got to support it, right?
No, and it just shows, right, that you don't need to use one tool to try to maybe find levels, right? You don't need to use the exact tools that I'm using. You don't need to use the exact thing that Michael's using. The key is when you see that, what does that mean? Well, then you think Michael and I are the only ones that see that one? Nah, man, we're not the only ones. That's the one thing you got to remind yourself. If you see it, majority probably see it also, right? And so how it reacts off of that level is the vital thing to look. Now, I think what I'm looking for at least is I'm still waiting for AMD to kind of give it one more scare out, right? the bigger volume coming in on that. So I think it just traps some buyers right back towards the 119.20s. Now I want to see them get flushed towards this 118.50s, and then I want to see it start to recover after that. AMD loves to flush them out and then start bringing them higher. So we'll see what happens on that one. Watching the Qs overall, looking to see if we can get one more scare to the downside, maybe a move slightly below 516 that starts to recover.
Yeah, it's the best part I find of finding these zones and then having it prove that they are important isn't even the fact that, you know, you could take a play and maybe I've made a couple bucks off of it. It's more about you now have your line in the sand. It's like what we were talking about on the daily chart when it came to looking at that 580 area, right? For my swings, for my long-term portfolio, I was basically saying, hey, if we break and hold below 580, I need to start lightening up positions. I need to kind of reassess what I'm doing when it came to my swing trading and my long-term accounts. But if we stay above that, I want to be buying stocks, and I want to be buying stocks aggressively. So again, whether or not this area makes money for us or not, for me, that's less important than the fact that now we've got it, right? So if we have a sustained move above this, and you can see us reverse here, if we have a sustained move above 592, then that looks pretty bullish for the day. If we have a sustained move below 592, then it might be a little bit bearish for the day. If we just spend one candle above, one candle below, and we do that for the series of the day, then it's just going to be chop. But you know, you now have an area that not only is a speculative area that you think is going to be important for the overall market, but now you have an area that you know is 100% because there are participants putting large sums of money. When you're talking about the S&P 500, anything that moves, it has to be large sums of money. So you have a lot of participants putting large sums of money around this price. So it just gives you that kind of confidence of, okay, now I have a plan. If we're above this, I potentially want to be a buyer. If we're below it, I want to look to potentially be a seller.
All right, guys, starter on an AMD there. I just took like 100 shares there to get a start right around the level that I was looking at. And it did similar to what I was looking for, right? Undercut of the 118.50s and higher volume coming in. You see how that change of volume happened there? I think that's a lot of the bulls getting washed out, right? You get this volume spike, bulls getting washed out, some bears jumping in there. Now I want to see the bears almost get the spike right back at them, right? So if they want to short that low, now if it spikes back here towards, let's say, 119, the bears will feel the pressure. Market likes to hurt the most. Let's see if it can start to hurt the bears now instead of the bulls.
It's Nintendo's symbol. Did you see that this morning, the new Switch? I don't know if you game at all.
No, I mean, I have a Switch. I know that the new one was kind of intended to come out. Did it came out this morning?
It was announced this morning. It looks really, really good.
And
I knew it was a weird
I know they were talking about it was going to be announced sometime early in 25. So it looks like it went pretty early.
Yeah, and this is just tells you this isn't the stock to trade. So I looked up Nintendo, and it makes sense, right? All the action's happening on the Japanese exchange. Nothing's really happening on this one, but yeah,
it's OTC, right? Is it?
Yes, NTDOY.
Right?
Yeah, so it's not a good one to play, but
man, OTC stocks. I mean, probably not the place to be at, right?
Well, and that's what everyone's looking for with the marijuana stocks, which were up this morning, but are barely holding on to that now. Is that right? Once there's some rescheduling, then there could be some uplisting because there is. Again, I can tell you from my experience in the hedge fund days, there's funds that just cannot legally touch OTC markets, right? They're just not allowed.
The majority of traders don't do it, so let alone the bigger money, right? I mean, do you mess with the OTCs, Michael?
No, not usually. I will sometimes if it's something like a marijuana stock where I know that it's necessarily junk. There's some sort of regulatory thing, but yeah, generally not. And it's just generally I want to keep my scanning to not only stocks that are in the market, but I usually try to keep my scannings to stocks that are in the Russell 3000. And some people don't know about the Russell 3000, but it's essentially an IWV is the ticker for it. The Russell 3000 contains like 97% of the universe of stocks. So if you really want it,
add on AMD.
a broad look of it, then you can see what's going on in the Russell 3000. But yeah, and it's just a little bit of a quality filter. You're probably not a scam if you're in the Russell 3000. Doesn't necessarily mean you're a good company, but it probably means that you're not just a complete scam. So.
All right, guys, got the ad there. I got 200 shares of AMD. It just made a low at 1836. I'm going to look to see if it can undercut that and then get right back up. So right now, I'll let it test one more time there. It starts to become into like my rule of three. So there's got 1, 2, 3 times to try to break towards 118. This is that last attempt here. Look for like that undercut and then for it to just come right back up. We'll see if it gets that action. And there's the action off of that, making it look like it's going to break down and now starting to reverse. And what do I see? Higher volume. That's my confirmation signal. Now I can go in for one more add. At that point, now I'm done adding, right? Now I have a good position near the bottom. I can use the low of the day to risk here and look to see if we get AMD to start coming back. What's a good sign, right? Will be the Qs, right? Looking to see if the Qs can get back through that VWAP. Talked about potential scare around 516 for the Qs. Very similar action that we got, right? 515, 68s, undercutting the 516s. And then the next candle did what? 515.92. So I'm going to start looking for that to kind of hold there off the 516s and the Qs and start to get back through 517.
Yeah, and you go back to that AMD chart you just had up and zoom in a little bit, or zoom out a little bit. It was this same Bollinger Band thing we just talked about, right? See how those three candles in a low they're spiking through the Bollinger Band, right? That's your signal to stay short, and then your signal to get out is that next candle that just happened that just said, hey, we're lifting from that bottom Bollinger Band. We're no longer hugging that 2 standard deviation move to the downside, and just like, again, he invented these things in like the 70s, right? So it's been 50 years now. He's been trading the same kind of idea on longer term charts. But again, you can see it right here, where as soon as it lifts from that band, people are like, okay, I can no longer be short anymore. It's no longer hugging that. So then you get your nice little bounce. That's a good trade there, Mitch.
Yeah. Now we'll see if it can kind of get through, right? I think the big thing for me is it can get through 119. At that point, I could be break even and very low risk on the trade, right? One of the things that I'm trying to do is really work up this account. Right now, I'm at 1450, right? I need to get this to 3,200, right? So pretty much very close to the 50% mark on this. So a lot of it to me right now is just trying to finish the week off great, right? I've had 2 or 3 days of about 200s to 250s. So I'm just trying to keep riding that trend. If I can make another 250, 300 today, keep the trend riding higher, that can give me a nice little cushion that at some point I'm going to run into a red day, but it just got to keep building that cushion and keep driving forward, right? So we'll see if we can make it to, of course, what we're all looking for, that funded account, right? Let's go. Let's make it, man. All right. It's good to see you guys out there from Montreal. Look, you got some Canadian love.
Oh, there we go. I'm not alone. That's
another guy freezing out there.
Yeah, it's wild to see, right? This anchored VWAP. Again, drew this yesterday and just 3 times in a row now bouncing, breaking and bouncing off that. So yeah, I really think that is that's the level to look at, right? We've got that defined. So now my whole day becomes a little bit simpler. And if we are above that, then I want to be bullish. If I get any signals from my long-term kind of swing portfolio, then that's great. I'll take those. If I don't get those, or if we break below that and I get some signals from my long-term portfolio, then I'm not as interested, right? And when I go through and I'm starting to look at everything that's going on here, a lot of flat, right? A lot of flat action here.
Yeah. One sign of concern, right? I know I'm in the bull camp, but I always tell you guys when I see both sides. That's one of the things that I think you'll hear from Michael and I often, right? We're going to tell you at both sides. We're not going to lean, just be bulls. We're not going to lean and just be bear, right? So look at the action in Apple today. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign for me. No. At least the action in Apple is really bad right now. And so that's what's keeping me a little wary here on AMD, because AMD is more of a momentum mover, and I need momentum on the upside if AMD is really going to take out the highs again on the day. So we'll see what happens here. Watching the Qs action here to see if we can clear the 517s. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. Let's take a look at it on a 5-minute here. You can see how there's some wicks up here in the 517. I want to see a close up there at 517.30s, not wicks up there at 517.30s. Let's see if we can get it on a 5-minute basis.
Yeah, and the term that, you know, I think encapsulates what we're talking about well is weight of the evidence. All right, and that's what we end up doing as traders. We take a weight of the evidence approach, which says, you know, maybe I have 3 things in the market today that look bearish, but I have 10 things in the market that look bullish. Well, I'm going to lean to the bullish side and see if any of those 10 bullish things flip over. Then maybe I'll get a little bit more bearish, and vice versa, right? If we end up holding, you know, we end up those 10 bullish things and they hold, that's what we want to take a trade, because all we're doing is we're doing probabilities, right? The thing to remind yourself, no one knows anything. We're all just looking at the data as it's coming in. We're interpreting it our own way, and then we're just trying to give you the probabilities, right? And again, the way I look at it is I define levels. I want to see where the buyers and sellers are fighting, and that's where I want to kind of take my shot. So right now, that's sitting around 592. I've got my long position open. I've just got it on the SPY here on the paper, and in my real account, I got some futures that I bought, and my level's defined, right? If we start to break and hold below 592, I'll exit with that absolute stop at 591. If we can get a little bit of bounce to kind of 593.50, that's probably where I'll take at least a lot of the position off, and then go from there. But yeah, just again, weight of the evidence. We're just continuing to chop around here. We got natural gas inventories. I don't know if that's going to shake us up, but we got that coming in 8 minutes. Not an insane news event, but you know, could be something, right?
Love to see it in the chat, guys. A lot of love out there. One stock that's interesting to me today, XPEV. Nice flag pattern on the 5-minute. Just recovered the VWAP, right? I mean, as pretty as it gets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is doing really well. What I like is this. Like the first 5 minutes, it did a resistance right there. And then now you got those undercuts. That rule of 3, I love it, guys. It's 1, 2, 3, attempt to break down and recover above VWAP. That's one of my strategies right there, guys. That's a nice recovery there on 1380s. We'll see if it can get back there towards the high of the day on the intraday, 1398. And the daily chart, not looking too bad either on the XPEV, right? You can see how it's been approaching the strength. It does gap up today, so it's a little bit tough to get through that 14. Maybe you can just get right through it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Interesting chart for sure.
For sure. And this has been a very interesting space where, right, you go to the daily chart on this, you know, this autonomous vehicles.
XPEV is a little different than all the China names, right? At least from what I saw today. I was looking around to see if maybe it was just an all China rally, but I still think China's an important player in 2025 to watch.
Yes, and I agree too, and I think it's because everybody hates it. That
exactly. You're with me on that. Yeah. So everyone doesn't want to invest in that area. Well, guess what? I'll watch it because that might just be the best trade of the year. Right? So.
Yeah, and what I wanted to point out here, right? So you got KWEB, which is a Chinese ETF, down 0.5%. You have FXI down to flat, and then your XPIV is bouncing and actually moving higher on the day. So you know, you'll hear me rant until you guys are bored in the face. The most studied thing in trading and in technical analysis is relative strength and relative weakness, right? Buying the strongest, buying the leaders, shorting the guys who are, you know, you can do a basic study. I'm going to buy everything that hits a 52-week high, and I'm going to put a trailing stop on it. I'm going to short everything that hits a 52-week low, and I'm going to put a trailing stop on it. You end up making money in the long run. So if you go and you look and you say, okay, this is a Chinese name. I just looked at a bunch of Chinese ETFs. Those are all down on the day. This guy is now up on the day. That should just tell you something in and of itself without needing to dive too much deeper. It's like they are selling China, but yet they're buying this particular name. So very interesting, right? I just drew a very basic kind of wedge type pattern on that. We're breaking out of that on today's candle, and we're holding. So as long as we can dig in, right? As long as we can hold in this candle and hold at above that tightening zone, that's really, really interesting to me. Just to see again, if we can hold higher here for a couple days, right? Might be off to the races. Long-term chart looking like maybe a double bottom, right? That's a really long-term chart, but right, maybe we had a bottom back here, and then maybe we're having another bottom kind of back through here. This will be very interesting because I believe these guys sell exclusively within China right now. I don't think they sell their cars in the US. So that might be kind of like a tariff related type thing, saying, well, it doesn't matter as much if they're just buying and building cars just for China. It doesn't matter if they end up going in doing that tariff in the States or not. But yeah, interesting chart, right? Big double bottom here, nice wedge it's breaking out of. So if you're looking at just this part of the chart, that's kind of a cup and handle style pattern, which are amazing patterns that can lead to some real long-term growth in certain names. We saw it in Bitcoin, we saw it in gold, saw it all over the place. So this is interesting. Again, when Mitch is talking, he's mostly exclusively talking day trading, unless he specifies other. When I'm looking at something like this, I'm thinking more swing trading. So I may go look at the options, which is a good way to trade China because I can define my risk, right? I can buy a long dated option. I know the price that I pay for that option. That is the most amount I can lose, right? It can go to zero and I'll still be fine. When I look at things like biotechs or Chinese names or natural gas or something like that, options are an interesting way to do it, just because, again, when I'm sleeping, if this company is a complete scam and goes to zero, that's okay, right? I will buy as much of the option to make sure that I am okay, if not just a little bummed, if the whole thing goes to zero.
We'll see what happens here. The Qs are in the battle, I feel like, and so is the SPY. SPY kind of struggling along also, all right off the low here on the 592 spot. So we're definitely in the battle there. I'm going to keep an eye out to see what happens there. I'm starting to see some industrial names starting to come back. That'll be a good watch to see some of those big boys, see if they can lead. Cat starting to get a nice little move up higher, pulled to the 378, now pulling on the 9 EMA, but holding really well. Let's see if it makes a move towards like 380s here. Watching these actions. Honeywell looking decent there. We'll look to see what happens in the industrial space to see if it can get the lift. Financial space led by JPM today, not looking too bad. There's some names that are still holding on, like Goldman Sachs looks interesting for me here. Morgan Stanley getting a nice little push and kind of leading Goldman Sachs also. So I'd take a look at these names. How are the crypto platforms? Hood, not looking too bad there, just off the VWAP. Coin just recovered VWAP. This was a pretty decent move yesterday. I'm keeping a very close eye on Coin to see if it starts to make its move back. See what happens on that one. And then also SoFi was mentioned in the chat. I caught that comment there. Not a wrong name to look at either. Interesting daily chart on SoFi.
Yeah, this is SPY just continues. It's like a magnet. Just gets pulled down to this 92. Again, could just be showing us one of two things. One, the market doesn't really want to move too much today after the crazy move it had yesterday. Or two, there's just a very extreme battle going on with buyers and sellers. And I think the easiest way to kind of know which one that is just start looking at some volume, right? We could do some volume, or we could do a volume profile, if I can find it there. Volume profile, volume by price, sure, call it whatever you want, right? And this is just showing us a volume but flipped on its side, for those who don't know. And what a lot of people will look at is they'll look at where is the money changing hands, and you can see overhead there's a lot of kind of bearish action changing hand as opposed to the bullish. So that is kind of the overhead resistance that we're dealing with. We have to get through all of that action, all of that supply or liquidity that's kind of taken place. Not as much as I would have thought happening at 192. So again, not looking too good for me. I think on my account, I may exit for a flat here. Just too many times of testing. If you're going to knock on the door once or twice, that's okay. If you're going to knock on the door 6 or 7 times, eventually it's going to break. So I'm going to be really, really tight with my out here, and any kind of sustained move under this VWAP, it could be wrong in this trade trying to go. But again, I just like that I got my line in the sand. I don't need to think about it. I know roughly the zone where I'm going to turn a little bearish on the day, and it's fine, right? If we are going to be bearish even for a number of days, let's go back and we can take a look here without volume. We have this massive gap right here. So us selling into this gap a little bit and then moving higher is not only fine, I think it's perfectly healthy, where again you have that kind of action where you're just saying, okay, got a little bit too extended, maybe we take a little bit off, take some profits and see what's going on from there. But Yeah, it's very interesting what's going on here. This just can't get going one way or the other. So eventually one side of this war is going to lose, and then that's when you're going to get kind of the real big move from there.
Yeah, right now I'm looking at Apple. It's back on the long-term trend line around the 232s, 233 area. It kind of lines in. It depends on how you draw it. But looking to see if Apple starts to bounce. It's been literally like an hour down, right? It's been what, 1, 2, 3, what, 5 candles? Yeah, 5 candles straight down on Apple.
Yeah, so I've just updated this volume profile a bit. I had a bit of a weird setting, but this is just so far today. So again, you can see where all the volume was traded. This is an interesting thing that I know a lot of futures traders use. They want to know where kind of the action is. And right today, it makes perfect sense. All the action is happening in kind of 592 up to 593 in this zone right here. And then below this, there's way less volume that's taking place. And again, it will just show you where the fights are happening. If you're not so good at looking at the actual just price action, you know, the POC, the point of control, guess where that is? It's 592.29. It's just showing us that's where the most amount of volume has transacted today at that price. So most amount of buyers, most amount of sellers, they've met at that price, and they say that's the price that we want to do business. We have the VWAP that's sitting just right above us at 592, and then the value area high and value area low that you see here on the chart. I think that represents 70% of all volume has taken place within that zone. So the low here is kind of 591.39, and then the high is 593.50. So just showing us that most of the volume has kind of just taken place in this 592 to 593 zone. Again, if we end up holding, that looks bullish to me, because when we get into these zones where there's way less volume that's taken place, you can see faster moves through those zones. People end up doing a lot of trading, even swing trading, off of these. You know, if it gets into a high volume area, that's where they're looking to get involved and accumulate. And then as it's going through these lower volume areas, you can think of it almost as going through gaps, because there's not a lot of, if there's not a lot of action there, if there's not a lot of volume that's changed hand in a zone, then there's not a lot of emotion in that zone, right? That's what we're trying to gauge. We're trying to gauge always what the sentiment is. Where are people defending areas? Where are people letting go of areas? If you have these volume nodes that have taken place, we know there's a lot of emotion in that zone. If you have these low volume areas like what we see up here, then you know there's not a lot of emotion that's taking place. So areas that there's not a lot of emotion, you generally get not a lot of people defending. So again, we went right back up to that VWAP and then back down. So now I'm almost interested in, because I got out of my position there for a scratch, I'm almost interested in flipping and potentially turning bearish here, which is not something I do too often, is having a synopsis and flipping. But if we're going to break this now for the 6th time, again, eventually we got to give way here.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now. That was a good bounce that we just got, and it just kind of failed on AMD. So I'm getting really close to doing the same. So at this point, it's like can't even undercut the low right now. I don't even want it back into the 20s here. It could hit 30, but not anything below into the 20s here. So what I can do is I can just do low of the day and then just risk off of that now. At this point, it's just being like I can push it and push it and push it. Eventually, you know, you get burned, right? And so at this point, I've at least held really close, had a nice position. Now we'll look to see if the Qs can make that move back up towards the 517, because if it makes the move towards 515, I'm going to get the quick wash anyways. So I'll be watching to see if it recovers. If it doesn't, I just get cut out at AMD more than likely. So that's okay too, right? Because there'll be a measured $100 loss. We've been making 235 to 300s on the win. I'll take that any day.
Yeah. And you know, the beauty of it too here is we've kind of determined the type of day that we're dealing with, which is we're going to chop around the zone until we get a substantial move one way or the other. So what ends up happening is you notice that neither me or Mitch are chasing highs or lows, right? We're not buying things. We're saying, okay, it's pulled back to the zone. Maybe I'll buy some. Okay, it's breaking this zone. Well, I'm going to stay away from those. It's very much showing us anyway, at least so far today, not to be a day where you're buying new highs or you're selling new lows. It's more of a day where you're doing the complete opposite, right? You're looking for these areas and you're trying to get as tight and as close to these areas as you possibly can, because you're not, the Momo is not there, right? And when that's fine, right? There's some people that will only trade certain markets. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's some people that will only trade momentum to the upside or momentum to the downside. There are days where neither of those take place, and you're just kind of a range trader. And that's, I think, a lot of what's happening right now. So again, I'm watching here to flip my position that I had long. I got out of that for, it ended up being a couple bucks, but pretty much a break even. And then short some future contracts, again, if this zone looks like we're going to be under it. But I'm certainly not going to go through the low of the day and be short in there. So I'm going to probably take a little hit on the SPY here. Just try one more time. Made a couple bucks in the first one. So even if this other one's a loss, still doing okay. So yes, I have shorted some S&P 500 futures there.
There you go. And don't worry, guys. I won't yell at Michael because he's shorting against me, right?
That's what makes a market, right?
That's what makes the market, guys. You can't be mad at your other friend that's shorting the stock that you're longing, man. You just gotta realize this is a game. Some of us are going to win. Some of us are going to lose.
Exactly.
The idea is just learn how to play the game. It's a probability game. This is why I have a recommendation for some traders that have a tendency of struggling with probabilities, wins and losses. I recommend you watch The Price is Right after this show at 11 a.m. The reason why is that what's that show all about? It's about winning and losing, right? And money, right? And so I think when you watch shows like that, your mindset starts to change a little bit. You stop thinking so much about winning and losing and just start to work the game, right? If you notice the people that win on The Price is Right, it's because they know the games, they know the strategy involved, and they're not worried about winning and losing. They're staying in the moment and playing the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also one thing with The Price is Right. It tells you that it's nice if you can get the exact price, but how often does that happen, right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to guess areas and zones and things like this where, nice every now and then, and you'll do it every now and then where you'll buy a stock and that'll be, almost to the tick, the exact bottom for the day or the next couple of days. It won't happen very often. So, okay, right? This guy still won the game show, but he didn't have to do that, right? He didn't have to pick the bottom. He didn't have to pick the top. Right? He just had to get close enough, and that's what we're trying to do here. And it's one of those things. The more I look at this, we could both be wrong, Mitch. Because look at this SPY. Look at the bar coding action here of up, down, up, down, up, down.
That's why sometimes, man, and I have a tendency of doing this a little bit more than I think other traders. I have a tendency of focusing on the Qs more than the SPY in days like today, because it's ran by the Qs anyways. Yeah. That's what I think, Michael. A lot of the times I'm just like, if the big boys can come back, that's what probably does it, right? And so I'm looking at the big boys right now. I'm starting to see Apple starting to show a little bit of a wick. Nvidia starting to come back. AMD starting to come back, right? So at this point, I talked about how if I got through 119, I would go break even. I'm about to do that, guys. And then at that point, great week for me, right? And Google now starting to show a little bit of some strength. So now I'll look for the big boys to get into the green and start to lead, right? Or like an Nvidia. Can you make it through the VWAP and start to take a little bit of a leading action? That's what I'm going to watch. Why? We're through the first hour of the market. The day traders left. Now let's bring the market up, guys. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and no, I think that's likely what's going to happen here. Where again, we've been holding this for some time. Back and forth. So I took a little tiny win on one of mine, a little tiny loss on the other. So I've done pretty much nothing today, which is fine because the market's done pretty much nothing today. The point of control moved up a little bit, just showing that the highest volume traded is now the call it 592.50. So that's kind of what you want to see, right? You want to see the amount of more volume is getting pushed up and up as people trying to get filled at a higher and higher price, but like I said, Mitch, we could both be wrong here because we're getting up, we're getting down, we're getting up. And it's important to note that's why I think, Mitch, you've probably taken, I think I've heard you take 4 or 5 break-even trades today.
Yeah.
And it's just because that's the environment. It's not the, yesterday we were kind of swinging a little harder, right? I know I had a big day yesterday in my longer term accounts, and even the strategies I've been testing have had a really big day. And you did as well. You've had a big day yesterday, but it's just not that today. Not yet anyway. Maybe after lunch, maybe we do this until lunch, and maybe after lunch something happens. Maybe they really care about who is this person speaking? Williams, FOMC member Williams. Maybe Williams is going to really shake us up. But until then, just a digestion day. And what we talked about is in the longer term picture, digestion day is absolutely fine. We had a massive rally yesterday in pretty much everything. And so having a day where we just kind of chop sideways, maybe between like 588 and then 598, and we just spend a couple days or a week or so in that range, we could see that with the inauguration coming, with all this stuff coming. It's good that the market takes a little bit of a breath every now and then and just says, hey, I'm just going to chill out, right? Consolidate some of the gains. I think for the bull case, that's way better. Again, if things get too overextended to the upside, they end up snapping down to the downside. Just ask the quantum computing people. When things get too carried away one way or another. So again, this action, I look at this and I say that overall, this is kind of bullish action, even if it's leading to a little bit of frustrating day trading action.
Yeah, what I'm watching right now, the financials just took a hit there, right? So I'm watching to see if the financials can recover here, because that's an area that led some of this rally. I know it was a little bit off the CPI report. Yes, you can say that, right? But a lot of it also, I think, is the financials here, because in a Trump environment, what stocks did really well? Well, financials did really well. Yeah. So I'm going to continue watching that space to give me a little bit of insight here if this rally actually has legs. The bank earnings were great too. They really weren't bad. I think like I saw maybe one out of 10, 12, 13 reports now that were not the best. So I think this is a big watch for me, because if XLF goes through the low of the day around 935, 49.46, if I start to see that, yeah, to me, that's the let go. That's where you'll start to see the SPY let go, because it's, more of that financials kind of component into there. So that's what I'm watching right now, because the Qs are hanging on. And I think a lot of that is some of the smaller ones, not the big boys, because the big boys are all down there. And that's a negative sign. Meta is trying to come back. Google is trying to come back. So I'm watching those two. AVGO, another name I'm kind of keeping an eye on. But you're not seeing some of these big tech names kind of lead the action back. That's a sign of concern too, like I talked about with Apple. So let's see if they can start to come back there and actually get the Qs through the highs, right? It rejected 517 again, right? How many times can it reject VWAP before it breaks support, like Michael's been talking about, right? So we'll see what happens there, man. It's a battle right now. And what is this trying to do? Trying to make you overtrade. Yeah. Let's be honest, right, Michael? Like these are the classic days where traders take 60 tickets, 80 tickets, and it was just top. Like you'll even see it in your kind of your wins and losses. It'll be win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, if you're that style of trader. So
yeah, 100%. And right, if we go, we've seen this chart right here very green today. We've seen it very red today. And now it's back to being, I would say, pretty much exactly mixed. So just like Mitch said, there's days to really go after it. There's days to kind of chill out. I think this is one of those days to chill out as the market's getting that kind of fight. Now, when we look at just the overall, what we're seeing for volume, it's not crazy, which makes me think that we're not getting this epic battle that it looks like we're getting. We're almost just getting just complete indecision in the markets in any direction, where no one's really aggressively taking bets one way or another. Everyone's just waiting. And if you get the whole market waiting for this range to break, then what happens is range can take some time. And then quite often when it does break, it can be the opposite. So sometimes when consolidations are this tight and everyone's watching them, you'll get a break one way and then it'll just completely kind of rip back up. So there's still, at some point, right, I can almost guarantee you one thing is at the end of the day, we won't be right here, right? This range will break one way or another. That will give a very short trading opportunity. What I would highly suggest with traders is just have the patience to make sure you're not going crazy kind of one way or another, right? You're not
Mm-hmm.
buying the breakdown or buying the breakout and then shorting the breakdown and buying the breakout, shorting the break, doing that over and over and over again, because that can create a lot of problems where, you're just getting churned. And that's sometimes worse than just having a couple well-calculated bets that don't work out, which will happen. Churn it's in my opinion, it's just much worse, much harder to deal with, because you're just sitting back at the end of the day, just looking at loss after loss after loss for just a little bit, nickel and diming here and there.
Yeah.
So take a couple shots and away you go. I'm still short the trades that I've taken, but I'm again close to just taking a break even there as well. So very, very small, just kind of whipping through positions back and forth. But yeah, not buying new highs aggressively or buying new lows aggressively, just while we kind of hang out here.
All right, traders, let's have some fun here, guys. As the markets, we'll see if we get the shake or not. And if I am able to get that AMD, I'll be holding on a trend line approach essentially now that we got above that trend line, looking for the throwback looks to hold, right? So we got one attempt there. I'd look for maybe one more, but after that, I shouldn't see it down there below that 118.50s. So at some point, I'll be able to like hold break even. I'm right there in that 61 spot. If I put my break even out there, I would have already got triggered, right? So I'm just looking at that 119 recovery. If I can recover that, then I'll put the break even. Right now, risk, just keep it manageable, right? Something smaller than even probably half of what I normally lose, right? And why? Because I don't know if I have anything right now. What's going to tell me? The price action, right? Price action overrides everything, guys. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens today if the price starts to go in my direction, right? This is another reason why I can limit risk here too, right? So sometimes when I get into these positions, what I can do is just be like, okay, so we're shaking so much that I don't know where we're going. So I'm going to limit down. I'm going to take some of my risk off. I just took half of the sizing off there on a pretty much break-even trade, right? It's just take half of the sizing off there. Why? Because now I can actually give myself to the bottom end of the range and just let the trade go.
Yeah.
Let the trade go, right? At that point, just see what happens. I'm risking $44. Normally it's about 100, right? And so at this point, I took some of that risk off there. If it goes back through 119 and I see the Qs rip, I can add those shares back in, right? But once I'm in the green and in a position of strength, right now I'm in a position of weakness, almost waiting, hoping and seeing if the market's going to go in my direction. That's my biggest lesson this week. So I want to ask you guys out there, what's your biggest win and biggest lesson that you learned this week, right? So, hey, you guys drop in there. It could either be the biggest lesson, it could be the biggest win. This is the lesson for me, right? Because I've been in these moments plenty of times, guys. And I always say that sometimes it's not wrong to feel like, hey, this is choppy action. Why not just down risk off of this trade, right? It's been through my levels. It's been above. It's been below. It's been chopping all around it. Well, I'm back in the green. Why not maybe just downsize and look to see what happens here versus trying to hope and seeing that it's going to go in my direction?
Yeah, it's like what you talk about with the gas and the brakes, right? It's just now is just the time to lighten up a little bit. And
I was ripping it for a little bit there. I was burning out in the same spot, right? And at some point I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's ease in, hit the clutch.
Yeah, no, and it's just one of those that if the market's choppy the way it is, right? That's the move, is you take a little bit less size, you widen your stop a little bit, and you kind of walk away. If the market, the market is going to resolve one way or another from this range. No one knows which way it's going to happen. So what you can do is you can say, okay, cut my size in half, take a little bit of a wider stop. If I'm right, I'll still make my multiple R's my risk. If I'm wrong, then it's fine, right? It's not going to hurt me as bad because, again, I've gone a little bit wider. Same thing in really volatile markets. Right? And that's kind of what we're seeing. Like this, although it's very range bound, so in the traditional sense of volatility, it's low. But if you just look at these candles, it's actually a really volatile market where we're having this chop back and forth. If you look at each of these candles, and then you can compare them to these size candles that we had the other day. And if you look at these candles, they're not that huge. right? They're just small little candles. And then you look at what's going on here. These are very large candles. Just the overall price direction isn't going anywhere. So you can look at this. You say, okay, we have some increased volatility, even though there's no movement with that volatility. So let's just lighten her up. Let's just say, okay, I'm going to put a stop further away than I normally would. I'm going to take less size than I normally would. And I'm just going to let things play out.
Took another hit in the small limited account, guys, and that account is not looking good, guys. Only about $40 away from cutting me out on that small limited account, guys. So it's not all green, right? But what I like to do is have the tendency like today, right? I know that account isn't doing good. So what am I doing? I'm focusing on the account that's working for me, right? Especially in an eval situation, because the truth is, if it's not working for me, probably isn't going to change just immediately, right? And so that's why I tend to put those penny stocks like RCAD, QUBT in that account, right? And I'm trying not to trade those stocks in this account, right? I'm trying to trade stocks like AMD, like Apple, like Tesla, right? Especially mid caps. But just stating that, that's where I feel like I have a tendency of having the most wins, at least I've seen in my data. Now that AMD did that throwback look off that 118.50, and now I just want to see it take 119, right? If it starts to take 119, the hourly candle starts to look a lot better. It looks like hourly support test, and we can start working back towards the hourly, which could be, who knows, by the end of the day, back at 120s, or maybe where we opened up and spiked towards 121, right? So even if I only get that move back, right, we're talking maybe $2 or $3 from now. That's a nice $300, right? With 150 shares, right? So I don't need to get pretty with it here, right? That's where I feel like a lot of times that's my mistake, right? Trying to get pretty with it, right? And so at this point, it's just to see if the market comes back, right? Look at the overall market, see what happens there, right? We'll see what happens. I think the Qs, look at the wicking action there. It's been feisty, let's say that. And the SPY, the same thing. Look at the 592s. How many times have we wicked through there, right? So let's see if we finally start to get a recovery. And what is this? This is when the algos start to take over. This is that where I say you need to know the lunch spots in New York.
Yeah, it's and this is they love it, right? A lot of people I know, they go, oh, Citadel is shorting my GameStop to oblivion or something. No. How these market makers make money is by people over trading these ranges. That's the best day in the world for Citadel, is to have a stock that just doesn't move for hours and days and weeks and months, because every time you punch in, they're taking the other side of that, and then they're becoming delta neutral really quickly. So the over trading, punching in and out, especially in a range bound market, there is nothing that Ken Griffin guy loves more. He would love it if the market went nowhere for 3 years, because people are going to be trying to chase breakouts. They're going to try to chase breakdowns. He's going to end up making as much money as he possibly can.
What's the intention of brokers overall? Let's be honest. They want trade volume.
Yep.
Right? Let's just keep it like that, right? And I always say this, guys, and as someone that's part of Trade the Pool, I will say this at the end of the day. Our job is to make money, right? The broker's job is to make money also, right? Like, at the end of the day, that's the way the world works, guys. So keep that in mind, right? You're playing the game, right? It's the price is right. You start focusing too much on the wrong side of the things about money, you're not going to be able to play the game, right? Have to stay in the zone. My man, Mark Douglas, shout out to him.
Yeah, a great book. But yeah, it's 100% true where, we are just trying. There's definitely conflict of interest with the brokers, but it's all capitalism, right?
It's just part of it.
Everyone's trying to make money.
If the brokers weren't trying to make money, then there'd be something wrong. The system would be broken, man. It's just not how it works. And I always say it like this, guys. If for Trade the Pool's purpose, right? All the money comes in the pool every day. The question is, who's coming out of the pool with the money? Right? Because that's what happens. It's like we all throw that money into the market. There's a few of us that are going to take the money out. Majority are going to lose.
Yep. it has to happen. It has to be every time you make money in a trade, there's someone out there who's lost it. The market
Yeah,
is a zero sum game. And then when you include brokers, it's actually a negative sum game, right? Because
exactly.
you know the guy who bought paid a commission, the guy who sold paid a commission, and then the broker took a little bit of that. So they're the casino. They're the one that's always going to win. So our job is to make sure that we manage ourselves and our emotions and create systems and strategies where we're the one taking the money from the other people, and we're doing so in a way that we're not making the broker insanely rich, right? We're trying to do as much as we can with as little as we can.
Yeah.
That's why, again, the people who want to pop in and out every day, all day, 17 times a day, generally don't end up doing well for a bunch of reasons. But one of those is those commissions. And then people will talk about commission-free brokers, and I'm like, I guarantee you they are making money off you. They're not.
There is no such thing, man.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell them. There is no such thing. You're paying somebody. It depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their hearts.
Yeah,
right?
that's just not the way it works. Data sells. We always hear that, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's you want to be part of the data selling. Well, then you can go on that side of the business, right? That's why I look at things like, and I talk about this with traders always, right? As you get bigger and bigger size, direct routing actually matters. That's just what it is, right? And I think that's one thing that everyone should learn, right? We were going to talk about things like this. So if you guys have any questions, always reach out to us. Let us know what kind of topics you guys want covered. I know we talked about it right now, but I did kind of my side. Any biggest win or biggest lesson that you learned this week, Michael?
My biggest lesson was actually from the account that I wiped out there with the first algo attempt, and it was basically it was trying to give me too much. Right. I was trying to do too much. There was, like we just talked about, there was maybe 10, 15 trades coming through my system every day. And for myself, who is I always recommend Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. It's the most amazing book, I think, in trading. He talks about how there's some people out there who process information fast and on the fly, and they do well with incomplete information. And they have a whole subset. It's not one's better than the others. It's just, this is the brain, and they're good at certain things and bad at others. And then some people are slow thinkers who they need to process information. And, think of the guy who plays first person shooters versus the guy who plays chess, right? It's just different skill sets and mentalities. I'm a slow thinker. So having those 15 symbols flying at me all day didn't do so well. So I took the weekend and I revamped the systems. I focused only on the short side for a little bit. And now I'm trying to get something that gives me 1 to 3 trades a day. And I think that's going to be way better for my personal mentality when it comes to these things. So yeah, it was very much a less is more, like we were just talking about. Not even from the commission side of things, just more from my own sanity. The fact that I just could not deal with very, very rapid trades just getting kind of thrown in my face. So more of, and something that we talk about all the time, and I think is hugely important, more about finding a trade style that fits your personality as opposed to trying to force your personality into a trade style. It's huge. I don't know how many people they join a trading room or something and they're like, this guy's making a bunch of money, so I'm going to do what he did. Assuming that guy's even absolutely perfectly legitimate, it may not work for you, right? I know traders out there that are those very, very fast momentum scalpers, right? Find me something that's breaking a new high of the day and they're punching out 3 or 4 cents later. They do that a couple times a day. It works very, very well for them. I know a guy who's a multi-millionaire and he's been doing it for ages. And I tried to sit down and do the same thing with him. Just would not work for me, right? So, you got to find that thing that fits your mentality.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of times it's like hourly long pullbacks, buying support, where most people don't buy supports, right? Most people are selling out on supports, right? That was kind of like the AMD strategy today. And a lot of that is I try to bring in the psychology look to it, right? And thinking about that, right? One thing that is showing up on AMD that I think is interesting to see, and a lot of times what I talk about is that I use the indicators as more as something to show me conviction that, hey, maybe I got the timing right. Now we're getting the crossovers on the MACD with AMD smooth, right? So now it starts to look a lot better. And you can see that also on the Qs. So now we're starting to get that cross on the Qs, and at least it shows that we're getting some type of up momentum. Now, will it hold? That's a whole nother ball game. But now we're getting into that area where I talked about 517 closing, 517.30s. Now we finally got to close up there to 517.32. So now it's like, hey, do the bulls want to take it? Let's see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for now, at least, knock on wood, we are out of the range. Yeah, so the question is, what happens on the next pullback? I think is the really important.
Here you go, guys. Break even, stop now through the 119, and I'll just let it work.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
So yeah,
sometimes
a very patience requiring day for sure.
100%, man. What helped? Just looked at the hourly level, and I tried my best not to get too excited on the first action, especially as I saw the MACD like this, right? Like really expansive, not trying to cross, not trying to show the momentum. And then as it came towards that hour-long day, right, 10:30, look how it bottomed right at 10:30 today, an hour into the market, right? And there's a reason why. I'm not saying that I'm some kind of genius or anything. It's more think psychology sometimes. Think, where can the market hurt the most today? Especially in day trading, I've seen this more and more than in swing trading. It's just, where can it hurt today? Right? And sometimes it's not what can it hurt tomorrow. No. It matters a lot about today's action and yesterday. What happened? The bears got stuffed yesterday. The bulls came in. What happened at the open today? The bulls probably got stuffed, right?
Yep.
And then the bears stepped in. And then now they're getting stuffed, right? So the market likes to do this flip-flopping action. And I notice more and more of that in the day trading time. But that's going to do it for us today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the action. Biggest wins this week, biggest lessons, bringing you guys this. We'll do this every Thursday at the end of the week. I think this is a very important one, because if you're not learning, you're doing something wrong. I'll tell you that right now, right? Because that's what you see Michael testing so much things. He's trying to learn, right? Same thing I'm trying to do, right? Try to improve the system, try to improve the mentality, right? So you guys out there, keep working on your skills. Understand what habits you need to get to the next level. I did throw up there a link there for you guys. If you guys see that link, that's to get you guys to thinking fast and slow. My man made a recommendation for you guys. I'll throw it up there. I think it's very important to read as much as you guys can. Maybe it's an Audible. I do a lot of Audibles nowadays, and just trying to get just thinking in the right mindset, right? Sometimes that's podcasts, sometimes that can be books, but make sure that you're trying to stay up on that mentality and learning. That's going to do it for us, Michael. Thank you, like always, man, joining me this week, and we're going to keep pushing, guys. So if you guys have any feedback for us, please hit the comments below. Hit us up. You guys can always also email me, mitch@tradethepool.com. We'll just keep pushing the levels here, and we'll see you guys back on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm glad I said that one right. All right, Michael. Have a great weekend, man. Enjoy the snow.
Yeah, I'll enjoy shoveling it. You have a good weekend too, buddy.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.